What's your intentions, corn cob?
I mean to pack you in 1 minute, Briar. I see you smoked at Fort Virginia at Judge Burley's convenience. Which would you have?
I think that's bold talk for an aromatic shag blend.
Fill your pipe, you son of a bitch.
Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone out in the pipe community. How y'all doing?
Mm-hmm.
Time to get another Pipecast Thanksgiving Day special edition kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't noticed, we're a little full. Our pipes are packed to the brim. We're sucking down some warming spirits.
Mm-hmm. Which we will get into a little bit later as to all that business.
So this episode is going to be very Thanksgiving themed.
Yes.
Probably a little bit long on the long side, which is fine. And then we will probably be smoking potentially 2 bowls on this episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just don't see how we couldn't. Now, we've already been smoking a little bit before we kick this off.
Yeah, we've sort of, both of us have cracked open, and it's no surprise if you've been following the Instagram post. We've cracked open some of the new Peterson Dunhill mixes.
That's right. And what we are smoking tonight is Peterson's Nightcap.
Yes.
By the Scandinavian Tobacco Group. The same group who blended Dunhill Nightcap. The same blend.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially even the same 10 tobaccos that were originally supposed to be labeled Dunhill.
Mm-hmm.
But due to copyright and Dunhill deciding not to go forward with their naming in the tobaccos, has made a quick switch to Peterson.
Yes.
I don't know if we discussed this or if it's been discussed, but the Peterson brand, the pipe brand that everyone knows and loves, the workhorse briar that everyone usually cuts their teeth on in the briar community, they have a split between the production of their tobacco and who controls that, and the production of their pipes and who controls that. So the Peterson name is split between 2 companies, I believe.
Isn't the people who were involved with, like, smoking pipes, aren't they part of the blend or the pipe?
The pipe.
The pipe. Okay.
The blend, I believe, is... I'm not sure who's over the blend.
Well, say didn't they take their regular blends off the market for a little bit? Like, I was thinking there was a period of time where both the Dunhill blends and the Peterson blends were both off of smoking pipes. Like, they were just all sold out.
It was difficult to get 3Ps, Peterson's Perfect Plug.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, is it Killarney? I think that might have been difficult to...
Sweet Killarney?
Sweet Killarney.
I think that's what it was.
And University Flake was difficult to get.
You should. It's never difficult to get Old Dublin or Irish whiskey, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are pretty easy to get at any time.
But I think it was difficult to get University Flake 3Ps. 3Ps especially. I was seeing that stuff go like crazy.
I've never had it.
I've never let you have a bowl of it?
Never had it. It's a shame. But sort of what we're doing, like Zach said, we're sort of sucking down some spirits while we smoke this bowl. I'm breaking my rule. I normally don't drink while I smoke, but you know what?
But Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. It's time to give thanks. So, in the way of the old, Zach is smoking a now technically Irish branded blend,
Right.
and an English Dunhill pipe,
Right.
while drinking some Scotch whiskey.
So I got all the aisles together.
Yeah, and I am being seclusive to just the Emerald Isle, the best of the Isles, and that's not even up for discussion. So just shut your mouth.
I can't believe this Irishman's even speaking to me right now.
I got my what is this thing called? This is my Peterson. I call it a Sherlock Holmes. It's not a Sherlock Holmes Peterson, but it just gives me the essence of Sherlock Holmes. I think it's what is it called? I believe it's my Rocky. I think it's what it's called. Oh, it's a Dairy Rustic is what it is.
It's got kind of a calabashy look, or kind of a Dublin-y look even.
Yeah, yeah. If you've seen it before, if you've seen some of the Instagram posts, but that's what I have this nightcap in, and then I'm pairing it up with a nice Irish whiskey. So, we're two different boats here, but
Nightcap was one of the first, probably the first introduction to an English blend that I'd ever had. And I don't remember liking it too much because it was way, way early in the process. When you're supposed to, a lot of people kind of come to it through aromatics via usually cigarette smoking or something to that nature. And I remember a buddy of mine had, it's kind of ironic though, because I smoked Dunhill Nightcap in a Peterson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that was my first briar.
Oh, yeah. You gave it back, though.
And now it's kind of inverted. Like now I'm smoking Peterson Nightcap and a Dunhill. But yeah, so I did. I gave it back. But his first, the first English one I ever had was Dunhill Nightcap by Scandinavian Tobacco Group. When it came back on the market about in 2000 and, I want to say 10. I feel like it had sort of fallen off, and then it had a revival.
Talking about Nightcap?
That's right.
I want to say
No, it was on the market in 2006. It disappeared.
Yeah.
And it came back in like 10 or 11.
I think that's when it switched to the Scandinavian.
Oh, so then I had a Murray's Brand.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what I heard. I think a 6, 7, somewhere in there is where that stopped, and they were gone for a while. I think that's what I heard. But
then I continued smoking it with no issues. And then somewhere along the way, I think when everyone is this, so like I didn't really like it in the beginning, so it potentially was a Murray's blend. This would have been like 12 years ago. And then somewhere along the way, I did kind of start taking to Englishes more so than aromatics. I was starting to move out of that into, I think it's kind of a weird trajectory. I think you go aromatic full English or light full English, like a light English.
Yeah.
And then I think you start to venture out into
Vapors.
Virginia, Periques, and Burleys and stuff like that. But like, my first full English was Nightcap. I did return to it. Then, because I was in the world of discovering tobacco, I smoked Nightcap on and off, but then I was just it wasn't that it was bad, it was just that I hadn't smoked anything else. So, of course, I went to Artisan's Blend, and then I think Abingdon was next, and I was smoking a lot of, I smoked so much of that Balkan Blue, that McClellan blend. Oh my goodness.
I've not had a McClellan.
And then Meridian is a good alternative to that. I think Meridian's really good.
Mm-hmm.
We have a GLPs. I don't even know if Meridian's still made. I haven't seen it in so long. I mean, I hadn't smoked it, seen it, etc.
Yeah.
At the time, it was amazing. And of course, I've since switched to, as far as like a dark kind of, I say dark, tobacco's dark, but like a kind of robust English. I sort of am a quiet, nice guy.
Yeah.
But my go-to blend now is Chelsea Morning.
Yeah, the more lighter of an English. Or it's not light, but it's, I guess its market is to be an early morning kind of thing.
I think it's interesting how much I've just taken to
Peas?
Yeah, Greg Pease's blends.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I first met you, or not when I first met you, when we first started smoking together, I didn't get a vibe that you were a fan of Peas, really, to be honest.
And it kind of wasn't. Like, I kind of never was. I've kind of always been a McClellan guy. They fell away. I basically I didn't smoke for like a year after McClellan fell off. Of course, I smoked like, a lot of vapor coins, like
Scudo,
Deluxe Navy Rolls with Dunhill. Of course, that disappeared. I think it's back, but still, I mean, that's what I was smoking there for a little while because I enjoyed those. And then Reiner Gold, I smoked it a lot. But like, I really, after McClellan fell off, I never really went back to Dunhill, which was interesting. And then it fell away. And then just over the course of the last I feel like Peas has kind of helped fill a gap
Yeah.
a more Turkish forward gap that I think I've been missing.
Yeah. Because also with vapors, you're a big fan of Fillmore, which is crazy. I mean, I'm not. It's not that I don't like Fillmore. It's just, again, the peas is just coming in clutch for you. It's funny though. You talk about the natural. We may have touched on this before, but the natural arc of a smoker, of a pipe smoker. Usually it's cigarettes, and you make a transition into aromatics, and then you go to the full English, and you sort of venture out from there. You sort of find your home. I've never been a cigarette smoker. I mean, not like a habitual, like I smoke when I drank, college, things like that. Never been a dip, chewing tobacco or a dip or anything like that. It's never been a thing.
That's good, because dip will get you.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried it back in high school. I played football for a couple of years, so naturally you're going to run into dip occasionally. A nice bus ride back with your stomach turning into knots from a football game. But so when I got into the pipes via you, we went headlong right into like English and vapors and burleys. And
You think that that's probably a more appropriate way to tackle it?
I mean, I think it just depends. I mean, like I said, I wasn't a cigarette smoker, so I don't know if you could take a cigarette smoker and send them straight into English. Or, I mean, I guess you would, really, that you would think it'd be easier for that person. Me, not being a big tobacco user at all, I went straight into English and no problem. I've only had one, so I've been smoking since December of last year, about a year.
Right.
And I've only had one encounter with like nicotine sickness, and that was like a full Virginia blend.
Virginia will get on top of you. People don't believe me. They don't think it's like these nightcaps or these things. It's like, yeah, they have a strong flavor.
Yes.
I mean, it's the best way I'd describe it. A very woodsy, earthy flavor. But even if you smoke them pretty wild, I mean, they still have a kind of a saline, woodsy kind of thing going on. But I never felt that they were very just nicotine heavy. That would knock you down.
When we did Tobacotology, I didn't find this out till later, but we went head first in, and of course Artisan Blend came out the winner, which right now it and Nightcap are sort of battling each other, and I'll get into that a little bit later about as far as what I like or which one I would prefer. But I didn't find this out till later that like supposedly Artisan's a little bit tougher, supposedly, than Nightcap. Like it's got more of a hit. And I just went in, guns blazing. Like it didn't affect me at all. We were smoking bowls of it, and that's what I've been smoking ever since. Like this big hiatus we took. If I've been smoking, it's been Artisan Blend.
Artisan Blend is good though.
It is incredible. Now, so what I was alluding to earlier about getting back into your opinion of Fillmore versus other vapors of the like Elizabethan and Stratford and Telegraph Hill, is that Fillmore has more going on. It's more zest. It's got more pop, and that's what you want.
Right.
But see, that's how I feel about Artisan's Blend to Nightcap. There's more zest, more pop going. But now that I've been smoking a lot more Nightcap this month, I'm sort of like, I may not always want all that zest and pop. I may want a little.
The thing about Cyprian and Syrian Latakias is that they will, even in trace amounts, overtake something. Interesting thing about Fillmore, apparently it has Latakia in it.
Really?
At least that's the rumor, which I think is interesting.
What do they put it on the? Is it on the label?
No, it's not on the label at all. But if you look at tobacco reviews, not only have people said that they can taste trace amounts of Latakia, but it's also listed in the ingredients.
On Tobacco Reviews?
That's right. .com.
I wonder what Pease has to say about this.
I don't know.
About the rumor being that there is Latakia in it.
He might have commented.
If Pease has commented, y'all let us know on Instagram.
Yeah, I'd like to know if it has Latakia in it. It's not a lot. The interesting thing is I pick up a very heavy Tabasco-y smell.
On Fillmore?
On Fillmore.
That's right. We were talking about that last week sometime.
So, the Tabasco smell could be in part due to the Latakia. But I mean, it remains to be seen because you'd have to really... I've smelled weird things before in blends. I don't have the best smeller in the world. So
McBaron and the ketchup smell.
mhm.
That's famous, you know. I smelled a little bit. I could understand what you were getting at. There, I don't know if it's like full blown. There's a hint. There's a hint of Tabasco. I mean, now would I have smelt it if you hadn't told me? Maybe not. I might not have picked it out. But now that you told me that, I sort of. So I mean, take that with a grain of salt as far as me saying that. But
well, I mean, some things are suggestible. Some things I think you can pick up on. And if anything, you could at least probably picked up on some pepper, which denotes, I think, Perique. But I feel like that's usually a part of the retrohale, and less so in just a regular inhale, kind of like the sniff test.
You just mentioned it. I have not retrohaled nightcap, so I just did, and that's pretty. I like that a lot.
Like at all, you haven't retrohaled it?
Not since I've been smoking it. I've just sort of been doing the breath method. It's got a nice. It's got a real nice retrohale.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
The thing of it is very.
Mm.
You know, it's a very steady blend. I'll say that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. You know, and we talked about this jokingly before the podcast, but I mean, maybe I'm being clouded by Irish bias, but I mean, I like this. I mean, I'd never had nightcap as it was branded Dunhill. I'd only ever had Elizabethan branded as Dunhill.
All right.
And, you know, even so, I sort of got a different feeling about it now. I mean, and there's no lying about that. It's sometimes appearance and exterior factors affect, you know, taste and what you expect out of something.
Right.
You know, and at the end of the day, what does it really matter? Whether or not you like it more or less now. Only it matters to you. If you're enjoying it more now, then hey, all to you. Because I'm enjoying the nightcap. My only negative, and this is a super small thing that a lot of people probably be like, well, you're being a little bitch about it. But the Peterson Dunhill blends definitely stay on your breath longer when you're done with it. You know, when you're done with it, like I could smoke at noon, like on any old day, and at 11 o'clock that night, laying in bed, I taste it. Mm-hmm. You know, I brushed my teeth twice, 3 times, flossed, water picked, whatever, mouthwash, everything, and it's still there. So
it's probably because it's in your nasal cavities to a certain extent.
Maybe so. Well, you know, even like, you know, Ann will smell it on me too. So.
Oh well.
Like she won't really notice it until like, excuse us, we got an ups truck coming by.
Oops.
Like, you know, if I like a kiss or whatever, she'd be like, "You smoked pipe, didn't you?" I'm like, "Man, that was freaking 12 hours ago."
Well, I mean, that's the thing is it's a little bit more pungent, a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's been the case with both Elizabethan and Nightcap. You know, wait a daggum minute. I had Navy rolls.
That's right, you did.
I did, and you know, and I enjoyed those. But again, at that point in time when I had it, we were sort of comparing it with a Scudo and things like that. It, you know, sort of saying that for the money, it's almost the same thing.
Scudo is amazing. I'm gonna do another comparison of the same two again. Just because I just feel like I have to do one more comparison under the new naming convention.
Yes, it's deserving.
But, you know, I don't still think there's a lot of difference between a Scudo and Navy Deluxe Rolls, the Dunhill branded one.
Well, did we ever find out if a Scudo was blended by Scandinavian Tobacco Group?
Mm-hmm. I believe it is.
Well, then, I mean... There you go. I mean, it was minimal, the difference. Now, granted, again, I am a 1-year-old pipe smoker, and this was back when I was only like a 5-month pipe smoker. You know, and naturally, with time, you start to pick up on things more. Oh, look at that. We're looking at a picture of a Scudo right there.
And at the base is Scandinavian Tobacco Group.
There you go.
It'd be hard. I'd be hard pressed to say that it wasn't the same, personally.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I'm excited. I'm glad the Dunhills are back. Even if maybe I don't smoke them a lot, I know it's something that a lot of people really enjoyed and really wanted back. Now I've seen that some people apparently claim that they can taste the difference between this new Peterson branded, and I don't see how that can be the case. But again, to each, everything is relative, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. Ever since the fact that they put a freaking gold and white striped dress on the internet, and half the people in this world saw that it was black and blue, makes me question everything I see from here on to the end of eternity. Because I saw a gold and white dress, and how anybody got black and blue out of that, I do not know. So again, taking that and taking it to taste. I mean, taste is just. I mean, it's a thing. Every body is different. Everybody has gone through different things in their life, and had different experiences, and a lot of times the taste really has, as dumb as this statement is, sometimes the taste of something has nothing to do with how you taste it, if that makes sense. Texture a lot of times is a big deal. I guess past experience was something similar, and like placebo, like if you even think that something, like if this dish has something you don't like in it, you're gonna find it in it even if it don't. Like if you don't like onions, you try something and you think, you go in thinking, I think there might be onions in that. I better watch out. You're gonna taste onions even if they ain't in there.
Just like, what was that time you had that congealed blood in that stew?
Yeah, and
you didn't know it, did you?
I didn't know it, but the problem was, Ann messed up because she gave me a spoonful of just a bunch of stuff, like most soups and Asian dishes. You're not getting one thing, like you're getting a bunch of stuff. And I tried it, and I'm like, there is nothing in here that I don't like. The mixture, everything together didn't bother me. But then she said, yeah, there's like a congealed blood in there, dried blood cubes. And I'm like, yeah, don't ever feed me that again. Which is really weird because I've always been a staunch person when it comes to, seeing people try something, try food, they eat it, and then they tell them, yeah, that's monkey balls. And they throw up. And I'm like, but you were fine before they told you that. Mm-hmm. What's changed? But, now I've gotten older and I've gotten a little bit, not wiser, but a little bit more aware that things are just different, The human mind is a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try anything. The hardest thing I've ever tried was that Balut. Good Lord.
Oh, the Balut? Yep. Yeah, my fiance, again, as everybody knows, is from Vietnam, and they have a typical or very standard dish known as Balut, which is a partially formed duck egg. Now, it's...
Now, the interesting backstory to this...
Go ahead.
Is that I will try absolutely anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you put it in front of me, I'm probably going to eat it, and I'm probably going to love it.
Yes.
I remember going to a Korean restaurant, and there are these little minnows, is all I can say, little fish that they fried. Mm-hmm. And my Korean friend, half Korean, said I wouldn't like them. And I was like, well, I'll try it anyway. And I ended up eating almost the entire bowl. And I think they're basically just a garnish. Now, I'm an anchovy lover. Mm-hmm. And I've also eaten sardines. Sardines are a little bit difficult to eat for me. Not that they're necessarily bad. They're just, something about sardines and me just don't, I think I don't like the pressure cook where you eat the bones and all sometimes. Yeah. It's okay. They don't crunch really. But there's just something about it, like mush bones. I'm just not 100% on top of it. But it's fine. But that's where we're getting into the Balut.
Yes.
I don't like crunchy meat, personally, unless it's got golden, crispy, deep-fried goodness all around it. Now, here's the thing about Balut. It's got golden duckbill on it, but it ain't got no golden crispiness on it. So when that thing got fixed up for me, man, I swore I was never going to try that because I'd seen it before.
Yeah.
It's a Southeast Asian delicacy.
Mm-hmm.
I know they eat it in the Philippines. And I was like, never, ever, ever can I eat that. What do you think it was? And convinced me.
And I mean, you didn't like it. You tried it.
Well, what bugged me about it was that she goes, we're going to make it. She has to set it up. So she cooked the egg, you know, and then she pulled out the duck embryo thing, put it on a spoon, added lemon juice, pepper, salt, a slice of lime or something to it. And she goes, eat it like this. I said, well, I definitely ain't eating a duck. I mean, no wonder you guys had to dress it up, man.
It's like oysters, man. Like when you dress up an oyster.
But I'll eat an oyster. I'll just eat an oyster.
Yeah.
I like hot sauce on it, but I mean, I'll just eat an oyster.
I've come around to them, at least with the charbroiled.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I had one time with just hot sauce on it, and that was fine. It's the texture. It's a little too chewy for me.
I know some people really don't like them, and that's fine. And I can at least understand it because this is disgusting, but it is sort of like swallowing a loogie.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of slides back, but...
See, I guess I didn't know that at the time I was chewing it. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to just,
I just kind of slurp it down. It's almost like, it's like eating Jell-O.
But yeah, I mean, we got way down a rabbit hole on that. That was not what we planned to talk about. Before we get into Thanksgiving...
You know what? We're talking about food, so in a way, we're on topic.
We're on topic. All right. Before we get into that, we just had a little bit of not housekeeping, just a little bit of things. Just, we like to say what's going on in our lives and stuff like that. So I figured we'd just talk a little bit about how everything's going with you and being Mr. Daddy all of a sudden.
No, that's good. I mean, I think the thing that about being a father that can be frustrating is that there is some people call it colic, which is and there's all these different terms for it. Some people call it the witching hour. There's this thing that's been happening here from 5 to 8 o'clock, which is exactly when I pick up my daughter to when my wife gets home. And as soon as I get her, as soon as I touch her, basically, she starts crying. And that girl does not stop crying until mama gets home. So for 3 hours a day after my job ends, I've got a kid screaming in my face for 3 hours. Now she chills. She sleeps in the night. It could be worse is what I'm getting at. But good grief. Like clockwork. It's almost as if anyway, it can be frustrating. That all you see her in other people's arms smiling basically, and then you get her and she's just like, I don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
But they say it's this weird thing with colic that could be like baby migraines where they just like screech, man. Like I've never heard her scream like this before. And you just kind of like try to ride it out. She was actually pretty good about it today. And they say they grow out of it within the first 6 months. Now we're on week 11, 12. So I got a ways to go if she's still got it. But, it's manageable. It's just, it can be frustrating when you just want her to be happy. Now, on Saturday and Sunday, totally fine. Because I get to see her majority of the day when she's fine. But it's like when you only have like a 3-hour, we'll say 4-hour block. And that hour in the morning, she's just happy as a clam. Then the 3 hours that you get her, she's just screaming. And also because she's comfortable with her mother, when mommy walks in and says, hey, she quiets up.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird thing where it's like you're trying to bond with your kid, and the 3 hours of trying to bond is her screaming and you're just tending to her. Because even last night, like when I pushed her legs up, she pretty much ripped like a man. It was ridiculous. Like I was like, that's probably what's bothering you. And then she calmed down for a second. I was like, I solved it. Then she freaked out again. And I was like, well, I guess this is just the burden of being a dad.
Yeah. Well, other than that, though, it seems like y'all are making it real well.
Yeah, we don't. I don't dislike being a dad.
Yeah.
I dislike that my daughter seems to be unhappy at the same time every day. Specifically, the time that I pick her up, it can be frustrating, but it's not something that you need to dwell on too much.
Yeah.
Because I think then you can kind of get you can sort of develop a anxiety about being a bad parent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kids are difficult and they change, but they're wonderful to be with. So outside of that, it's just work, and I've been reading a book. I'm not going to tell you guys the title because this will be the topic of conversation for next month.
Yep.
It is Christmas related. That's about as good as I'm going to give you. But there'll be some interesting things that come out of our Christmas holiday special in December.
And if this Thanksgiving goes any way like I think it will, y'all are in for a treat because we're probably going to get wild on this episode. So just a little bit more before we get into it. I have recently, I'm about a year late and $40 short. I finally bought the Red Dead Redemption 2 game. I have been working my way through that.
How do you like it?
I enjoy it. I mean, I never once would have considered myself a gamer growing up. Which is weird because it seems like the gaming culture is so weird now. Like, it's so many people, and it's so serious. But like me growing up, like I played like a couple sports games. I may have played a little bit of like Call of Duty, like zombies and crap like that. But like I was really just like, I'm gonna play a football game. I'm gonna, like play a whole season, like a whole dynasty as a coach or something like that. So this is the first time I'm like really being serious about working a campaign and doing every little bit, and it's a good game to get into to do that because there's so much you can do. Will I do everything? I don't know. We'll see. But, I'm sort of enjoying that a little bit. That's a lot of fun. Also, this is actually a shock to me. Me and you both have started watching a show that I did not have any interest in watching. Not because I'm not a fan of this stuff, just because I didn't know whether or not I was going to get Disney Plus. And then I did not think you would be involved because you're not the biggest Star Wars guy. But that is The Mandalorian.
That is okay, so to clarify I'm not a big Star Wars guy, which is kind of like this weird, with everything with me, there's no simple path, it seems like.
Yeah.
To say that I'm not a Star Wars guy, and then to talk to me about Star Wars, you would definitely not have any idea that I wasn't one.
You have the knowledge.
I definitely have the knowledge. I'm relatively not, supremely versed in Star Wars. Pretty much raised on it with TV. My parents really didn't care for it. My uncle was a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
Had a
same here.
massive Star Wars collection.
Yep.
I think his was insured for like $150,000.
Really?
He had real Jawa costumes from A New Hope.
Really?
Yeah. Prototype toys, like super rare.
Wow.
I went to a convention with him and watched him deal in toys and stuff. The first Fangoria magazine that I ever saw was at a comic book shop while he was trying to bargain for, is it the Bantha? God, let's see. I say that and then I forget, but I think it's the Baffa or Bantha tank that Luke was in after he got attacked by the Wampa.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what it's. Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, so I watched him, what is it called? Haggle over a Luke Skywalker and that tank.
How big was it?
Just, very standard sized toy. I don't think
okay.
it was unrealistic. This was in the early to mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think it was a new toy. I think it was probably an 81.
Yeah.
I'm sure 80, 81.
Yeah.
Point is that I've seen all the Star Wars. I went to most of the Star Wars films with my uncle. He and I still talk about it. We'll be talking about it on Friday about the Mandalorian. I'm sure. I'm almost positive. The point to all that is that over the course of my life, I've watched a lot of stuff, and Star Wars just really wasn't covering it anymore. Like I know people who return to it and love it, and that's great. I'm not going to knock anybody for liking something, but there was just something about it that it just didn't really feel. I had too much of a void. I needed more story. I needed more substance. It just doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
However, the missing link here is that while the void of film wasn't covered by Star Wars, there was a secondary sub-void that wasn't getting covered at all, and that is the Western.
Yep. And that's where we get to The Mandalorian.
Yes.
I love The Mandalorian. Okay, before I get into that, my Star Wars is like, I've always enjoyed Star Wars. I grew up on them. Like, I grew up around the time, like, when I was really, like, sort of becoming not self-aware, but aware of things and being interested in things. I guess it's around the time you get like 10 or 12 or something like that. Like you start like really like finding out what you like. I mean, it still grows as you get older, but like anything before 10, like, I don't know, like I couldn't tell you anything that I did, but, around that time was about the time that the THX releases came out. And I remember just watching those like crazy, watching A New Hope and all that, and then of course, boom, Phantom Menace comes out, and I remember going to see that with my uncle. Mm-hmm. And so even though now as an older person I understand that movie has a lot of flaws, it's very nostalgic for me. I mean, I love Liam Neeson, I love the Darth Maul fight scene, Duel of the Fates, all that stuff, the pod racing. I've never been one to like hate on Jar Jar Binks. I feel like Jar Jar Binks is like Nickelback. People hate on him just because it's cool to do it. I mean, he's not the best character, but I don't think he's awful. I actually find Yoda more annoying in The Empire Strikes Back than Jar Jar in Phantom Menace. Mm. That's a very controversial topic.
Well, yeah.
I
One's
understand.
A play and one isn't. Jar Jar is legitimately a silly character.
Yes.
Throughout.
Yeah. And I think that's why I was more annoyed with Yoda. It's like, dude, I understand the point. It's to teach patience to Luke. But I'm like, just get on with it, dude. Like, I mean, and really, I'm not doing it justice because, of course, I've watched the movie 1,000 times. But it's like, listen, we know what you're doing. Just hear Yoda, tell him you're Yoda. Let's get on with it. Whereas, like, Jar Jar never was intended to be serious. So it's sort of like I can just brush him to the side.
Right.
And so, like, I don't get upset that he's there. It's just, he's a side character. Mm-hmm. He's there for comic relief, even though it doesn't land.
Doesn't land for an adult.
Yeah. But
I think kids still find that funny.
Yeah. And he's basically the Kramer of Star Wars. Like, he just comes in for comic relief. Like
he's also pretty gangly and just kind of lopes along.
Yeah, and what's crazy, if you look at something like the behind the scenes footage, the guy that they hired to do the motion capture for him, like, worked on that. Like he did a lot for that. That's what he was told to do. He's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it my all. And he's sort of been crapped on ever since for it. It's like,
you'll see the voice as well.
I don't know if he was the voice, but but getting back on track, I've always been like a big Star Wars fan, but like, I've read one or two comics since Marvel took it over and has made that part canon. Or not Marvel, Disney, but then Marvel made the comics. I've read several Marvel comics. I've never watched much of like the cartoons. I'm trying to watch a little bit more of Clone Wars to learn a little bit more about the Mandalorians. Mm-hmm. But I've always been a big fan of Star Wars. Now, the last ever since Disney got them, it has been a little bit of a roller coaster. I enjoyed The Force Awakens because I understood that it was a necessity. The prequels happened and they were not well loved, so you had to play it safe. Force Awakens comes out, just rehashing A New Hope. That's fine. It's what they had to do.
Right.
I understand that. Rogue One comes out. We differ on this. I love Rogue One. It is a lot of exposition, which is a little annoying, but I enjoy the visuals a lot. You know this if you've listened to us for any amount of time, that I'm a cinematic guy. You're more of a story guy.
I am very much story driven.
Now,
I don't like things that do not make sense.
Yeah.
Like in a film. I'll give you a great example of that. In Rogue One, when they're going to the father, the weapons expert's house.
Yeah.
They land like, good grief, like 7 football fields away and then walk up. Now, it's a pretty shot, but if I have a spaceship, I'm not walking anywhere if I don't have to.
Yeah. And I'm with you on
it's something as simplistic as that. And then the same thing, it's like, Darth Vader literally sees the freighter get away at the end of Rogue One. Literally watches the exact ship go away. Then he shows up in episode 4, A New Hope, and he's just like, where are those plans at? And she's like, this is a diplomatic ship. It's like, is it? Because I just watched you fly off. I killed like 30 of your dudes. It's like, but that, it's just this weird thing where if it would have been a smaller ship or an escape pod, it could have just thought it out just a little bit more.
Yes.
And had it rendezvous or something like that. But they didn't. They made it more complicated. It actually could have been a more daring thing, but they made it more complex than it actually.
Yeah.
Or they could have made it a little bit more complex, like as far as the structure is concerned, and then they ended up making it look silly and almost negating the first film.
Yeah.
And that's where
even though they were trying to back it up right to it. Yeah. And, then aside from that, The Last Jedi, had a lot of problems. I had problems with it, but not really the problems that most people had with it. I don't mind the story. It could have been better. My biggest thing is dialogue. I mean, you spend so much money. You're Disney, okay? Now, granted, again, we may differ on this. Marvel has pretty decent dialogue. Like, if you watch a DC film and then you watch a Marvel film, the dialogue is 10 times better. Now, is the dialogue in a Marvel film as good as Scorsese? Probably not.
Right.
But again, it's still.
I wouldn't even say probably not. I'd just say it's not.
But yeah, well, yeah. Needless to say, though, it's still passable dialogue.
It services the film. Yeah. That's for sure.
But why they just dropped the ball with The Last Jedi? It was some of the worst dialogue I'd ever heard.
Well, it's because Rian Johnson wrote the whole thing with very minimal, probably, oversight to him. And then another thing, too, that's interesting about Rian Johnson is he's not he gets a bad rap for a film that is really a burden in and of itself.
Yeah.
Star Wars is just, if I was a filmmaker, I don't know if I would ever take on the task of trying to appease so many different sets of people, because so many people seem to be so invested in it. From childhood to another generation's childhood,
yes,
to a new generation's childhood, to a new generation who wants to be more progressive, and they want a more complicated, almost political stance. And then another one that just really wants the Joseph Campbell hero of 1,000 faces, sort of generic good versus evil with, the candy coating veneer, I guess, of just action,
yes.
There's too much going on there. But if you look at old Rian Johnson interviews, he clearly states on numerous occasions that he is a writer that takes a particularly long time. He can never run on a deadline. Well, what's he on when he's working for Disney?
Deadline.
A very stringent deadline. And it shows.
Yeah.
I think this would have been... Disney's a little strange in that you have the money, really the director doesn't need to be a maverick necessarily. You just need something to be serviceable. So what do? You get a Kevin Feige producer-esque person.
Yeah.
I guess that could be Kathleen Kennedy, but it doesn't appear to be working with her.
Yeah.
But you get someone akin to that, and then you hire professional writers to assist you.
Look at the Marvel. Shane Black is probably their biggest name director that's in the Marvel universe. I guess Favreau now. But before he did Iron Man, was he really well known as a director?
He was an independent director. He'd done some interesting things, but nothing to. Iron Man was a gamble. People don't realize that Iron Man is a tier 3 superhero. It
was all they had left.
Yeah, they were you're talking about they called him Buckethead. He wasn't even in the comics community. It's Spider-Man, Hulk, Wolverine, and
Wolverine big time.
But you don't look at Iron Man as really anything. Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. really created
a whole
the
new
Iron Man vehicle, really.
Well, because Iron Man in the comics prior to Robert Downey Jr. was not like that. He wasn't as eccentric. He was more of like a Reed Richards kind of character, you know.
Yeah, except he's a drunk.
Yeah, that was really about it. But yeah, like you know, the biggest movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe were two guys who only had experience in TV and came out of nowhere.
Right.
And then did my favorite Marvel movie, Winter Soldier, and then from there on just carried it on, did what they did. But all that's beside the point. The Last Jedi had its problems, and then you have Solo, which was actually a very good film. It just there was fatigue. Fatigue was setting in. It was 5 to 6 months after The Last Jedi, with all that backlash. It came on the heels of Avengers: Infinity War. So I mean, it had a lot. You know, it's bad timing.
The deck was stacked, which is interesting that it was stacked as heavily as it was from the same company. That's what kills me. It's like, you thought that you were going to double down on something like this? Like, you must be high.
Which, if The Last Jedi had been a success, they'd have been fine. I think they were banking on The Last Jedi being a success.
Still can move dates.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they should have. At the end of the day, no matter what had happened with The Last Jedi.
But what happened is that your two gigantic vehicles for Disney, in this case, Marvel being one, and then the second one is Pixar, and I think Pixar had something coming out in July. They usually do.
Yeah, I think they did.
So you can't, where does Star Wars fit? Well, that's why Star Wars should be in the winter,
Always.
I don't know why. They made a smart decision, and then they made a really dumb decision. But like you said, with all the fan backlash, they try to reconvert it to May, which is silly considering you've got the market cornered with Marvel.
No Marvel comes out in December. December's not a Marvel month. So yeah, and so with this Rise of Skywalker, of course, you can tell very heavily it's an attempt to right the ship in a certain direction. And I could be eating crow because there's a lot of theories I've watched where it sort of was all planned in a way, but we'll see how that goes. My biggest problem with Rian Johnson is really, and it makes sense that he would do this. His defense of his movie post the criticism is sort of just dumb. Like he keeps talking about like how The Empire Strikes Back was not a popular movie until the 90s, which is complete total horseshit. It won the People's Choice Award movie of 1980. And you know how many movies came out in 1980? Or what movies there were? They shit. You had The Shining. You had, there's a lot more. There was a lot more. I just can't remember. I know The Shining was in there.
One of the Indiana Jones movies came out.
Yeah, one of the Indiana Jones movies. There was about 20 movies that came out that's just like, those are pretty good movies. Like,
look at 82. 82, I'm going to name 3 movies. E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And The Thing.
Yeah.
And the one that came out on top was E.T. Now, naturally, because the other two were literally panned. Mm-hmm. But those are incredible films. So, yeah. The contenders for 82 alone.
Yeah. But that's the point.
Then that's what shows like critically panned,
Yeah. But that's the point I'm trying to make is that the one that won People's Choice Award was The Empire Strikes Back. And so in trying to defend his movie, he falls on saying, hey, imagine if Empire came out today, it wouldn't have been well received either, just like it wasn't then. It's like, everybody loved it, okay? People loved Empire. So, like, that's my only problem with Rian Johnson. It's like, dude, I understand you're trying to defend your movie, but just own it. Just be like, stop trying to shift blame.
It's a difficult thing. Like I said, like, the situation he was put in, I can play a little devil's advocate. I think it's a terrible movie.
The Last Jedi?
Yeah, terrible. Mm-hmm. I just do not like any part of it at all. But that has nothing to do with any message. I just think it's poorly written. I just don't make it. Half of it doesn't make sense.
Now, the silent scene, I love the silent scene.
You're talking about when the ship goes to the other ship?
The reason why I like it is because the part that always takes me out of Star Wars is that you can hear the blasters in space. There is no sound in space. Cut that crap off. So the fact that there was a moment where
I get that, but
things went through.
I mean, there's so much suspension of disbelief at that point. There's no, I mean, you
Yeah, I
couldn't,
know.
you know, at
But
that
I
point,
guess-
it doesn't matter.
I guess what I'm getting at is it was a moment where I got something I wanted this whole time, and I enjoyed that scene a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying it should always. Well, I mean, if I had my choice, it would be. But you're right. There is a suspension of belief, and I'm fine with it. But then that happened. I'm like, this is incredible. See, you can do this.
The one thing I can criticize Ryan Johnson for is that, like, he's attacking people that aren't critics, which I find interesting. That shows to me that you have very thin skin.
That aren't critics?
That aren't
Well,
critics.
that's because the critics gave him like 100% score.
So at that point, why do you care?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? In other words, if it was critically lauded, then should you be responding to people who do not like it? To me, it shows that he probably, I don't like doing like armchair psychology on someone, but he probably is a little sensitive about it because he himself probably doesn't like it.
Yeah.
That could mean that there was some extensive studio tampering. And perhaps that is showing in his response to, the audience, or to like sort of sophomore critic. I don't even know what you'd call it, but like his response is very juvenile considering.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a cumbersome thing. Like, why would you even? I wouldn't even go to task on anything like that, especially if I was critically lauded by and praised. Like, it just seems strange.
And that's the thing too. It's like, why didn't J.J. Abrams just do the second film? What was the deal there?
I think a lot of it has to do with tradition. I don't think outside of Lucas anyone had consecutive directing.
Yeah.
In the first three, it was George Lucas, and then I can't think of their names, but there were two other directors.
Oh, there was different directors in the prequels?
No, for the original three. And I think they went back to that. The original three were not directed by 4, 5, and 6 were not directed by George Lucas. 4 was, and then 5 and 6 were directed by other people, and Lucas just produced.
And then Lucas did the prequels.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Back to point, The Mandalorian is a neo-Western, and it is very interesting.
Yeah. It's quick, it's succinct.
Yeah, it really it kind of gets you going. There's not as much force, kind of spiritualism in it.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's just like, I just feel like it really cuts to the narrative by being like a neo-Western, Yeah. I mean, it's essentially the man with no name in space.
Yep.
He doesn't even have a name. He doesn't remove his helmet. It has a very Judge Dredd kind of sensibility to it, mixed with some Sergio Leone, man with no name. And the guy's called Mando. It's short for Mandalorian. We don't know what his name is.
Yeah.
We've never seen his face.
Yeah. And the fact that I don't even know where I was going with that. I lost it as soon as I got it. But you're saying like it's man with no name. It's God, I don't know. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's just there's no fluff. It's just story. Oh, I was gonna say there's a lot of fan service too. The fact that it is so quick, there's no fluff. It still is able to give a lot of fan service, especially a lot to the Star Wars holiday special. There's a lot to that, and that's pretty cool. But there's so much references to stuff, and you can tell because Filoni and Favreau know what they're talking about. They know Star Wars, and so that helps a lot. I think before the end of the day, maybe another trilogy that comes along, I think Favreau would be a good guy to tackle it.
Probably, and I think the reason for that is that J.J. Abrams, to his credit, created A New Hope, and it worked for the fans. A lot of people loved The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Okay. But what J.J. Abrams is doing is he takes something that exists and remakes it, right? What Favreau did is he took something that he loved and made something that he loved out of something else. Very similar to what George Lucas did. George Lucas took old Flash Gordon films and plastered them over Akira Kurosawa films and essentially created Star Wars.
Yeah.
What Favreau has done is he's taken the love of old Star Wars films and plastered them over spaghetti westerns. Ironically, spaghetti westerns are also an imitation of Akira Kurosawa films. But so I mean, you sort of like have a what is it called? Not Cinedoche. It's a simulacra. Copies of copies of copies of copies of copies, and it's sort of muddled the original, but like it's there. The blueprints of like what that Western, what that samurai film was, is ingrained in the film DNA.
Yes.
Might take someone of a little bit more scholarly merit to like pinpoint all the little intricacies inside the spaghetti neo samurai Western space opera. Yeah, but like they're all there, and I think that's pretty fascinating. And I think that's what makes, in a sense, Mandalorian successful. And I hope that they move forward with the Obi-Wan television series.
I think that'd be good.
Something similar to that, where you kind of have this thing that we're familiar with, as in Star Wars, covered with something that they truly love. So I think Favreau truly loves Clint Eastwood films. Yeah. And I think that that's what he's doing, is he's plastering a Western with the veneer of Star Wars. And I think it works. The problem with Abrams, to a certain extent, Rian Johnson is Johnson's problem, I think, is that he kicked against the curb. He didn't want to be so known. I think it kind of messed with him. He didn't want anyone to be able to predict his interpretation of anything. Abrams just literally wanted to create Star Wars again. Yeah. But there's nothing interesting or sort of unseen about it. That's what made Mandalorian so interesting. Yeah. You've always seen Boba Fett, and like I call him like Magoo Fett, because Mr. Magoo's right into the Sarlacc pit. But
he's a punk.
He doesn't really say. I feel like he's not. He's like, okay, he's kind of clever. Also, he blew up and fell into a Sarlacc pit. It's like, it doesn't really seem like someone who's just, there was a film that was talking about him. He's all style and no substance. I definitely agree with that sentiment.
And I think you're dead on about taking something and plastering it over something you love, and it works. Because you can tell, not only is that working with Mandalorian, but this past summer, early fall, we saw that in on the big screen with Joker. I mean, it was just the Joker character plastered over, Taxi Driver or the King of Comedy. Mm-hmm. That's all it was. So
when it works. Something like that, I think it gives it a little bit more. It gives it a little bit more oomph, because perhaps audiences aren't as schooled in it.
And technically, it sort of happened with James Gunn. I mean, he took a bunch of Marvel misfit characters that nobody cared about, nobody knew about, and put it on Star Wars.
That's right.
And you got Guardians.
Because Guardians is just like kind of the new Star Wars. I mean, I consider it the new Star Wars. I think in 30 years, if Marvel or the superhero bubble bursts, I think in 30, 40 years, there'll be a revival. Mm-hmm. And you'll have like this sort of the horde-laden fans who are just like, this is Marvel, versus, this new wave of kids who see it completely differently, or new adults who see it completely differently.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short little break here and refill our pipes, and then we'll get back to you with the glorious Thanksgiving chatter.
Part 2, Thanksgiving.
Well, feels like it's been forever. Not for y'all, though.
2.
Thanksgiving.
It is now time to get into the reason for the season.
The reason for the season.
Thanksgiving Day. November 28th.
Yep.
2019.
And we have done a lot of research into this. And, we're going to give you a good history lesson. Now, before we get into the history lesson, we have swapped out our pipes, swapped out our tobacco. So
first and foremost, we have gone with a more traditional pipe for Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Pure Americana. Corn cob.
Corn cob. You are in, what's the one you got?
I'm smoking a Missouri Meerschaum Charlestown Carbler? I can't remember.
It's one of the ones Cornell and Dill did?
It's the Cornell and Dill version. It's the Charlestown or Charleston something. Charlestown Gent, or something like that. I can't remember. It's a really nice pipe, though. It's a bent, just corn cob with a acrylic stem, kind of like an orangey red tint. Smokes really good. I really love it. And you're smoking it what?
This is a General MacArthur, Missouri Meerschaum.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big old sun gun. I believe I smoked it in our Halloween episode. So.
Now, what we're smoking, though, is special.
It is.
It is a Bostonian tobacco from Massachusetts, New England, by L.J. Peretti, the oldest tobacconist, I think, maybe in the world.
Wow.
They've been blending since the 19th century for sure, and this has been a staple of theirs since the 1930s. This is Thanksgiving Day.
Thanksgiving Day. It is Burley in Virginia, and it is, of course, it's aromatic. It's got some anisette. Is that what you say? Anisette?
Yeah.
And then some like citrus and some like rum and fruit flavoring. It is a crumble cake. But yeah, it is a 4-ounce press cake that has been a tradition since 1939. So yeah, that's correct. Every year it's made available on November 1st for a limited capacity.
Mm-hmm. They do have like an old way of pressing the cakes together. Wood presses that they press with, like, I think it's just a hand turn press, and then they pull them out and package them up. Pretty normal packaging. I just took it, because it's a crumble. I just took it and threw it right into a jar. Mm-hmm. There's a block, I think, sort of kind of at the center of it, but I just figured, why not go ahead and jar it up, because it comes in a pretty sensible little plastic wrapping. That's about it. Yeah. Packaged pretty minimal, but it's a good little smoke. You can tell that the tobacco's got some age on it. It kind of has that, what I would call tobacco musk. Yeah. It's been around a minute. I feel like that really, I've detected that in older tobaccos. There was a tobacconist out of Seattle. He's passed away recently, but he was a blender from, he worked in the business forever, but he had sold me online orders. This was several years ago. Blend that he called Imperial, and I think the youngest tobacco in that blend was 50 years old. I'm not saying that this is 50-year-old tobacco. I'm saying that it has a reminiscent flavor. It wasn't aromatic. His wasn't, but the musky aroma taste that came from the tobacco. Yeah. Very reminiscent of this Thanksgiving Day.
It's good. It's good. It is an aromatic, so there's not a lot of body to it. It's a lot of flavor up front, and then it just sort of peters out. But I enjoy it. It's a nice smoke, especially like it sort of is. The name suits it. It's something that you would smoke on, like, around the family on Thanksgiving, and nobody would really be upset about it.
No, I think you could smoke this kind of in a parlor or something like that, and no one would say anything. But it is, the burley and the anisette and the fruit juices and rum really do all the heavy lifting. If you were just to give it to me and say, pick out what's in here, I probably wouldn't say there was much in the way of Virginia at all. Because if there was, I feel like there would be some more diversity in the flavor profile. There just isn't. Yeah. Like you said, it's like you get some of those additives up front, then it dissipates pretty much. There's really nothing on the retrohale. It's just a smoky concoction that is pleasing. I think would probably be relatively pleasing to smell.
Yeah, definitely there is a lot of burdock. It is super smoky. Mm-hmm. Now the bag note, tin note is really good. Like, it's a really good smell. Mm-hmm. But you can smell that age on that, just on the bag note. But so yeah, it's some good stuff.
Yeah, I don't think this is a bad tobacco. Would I buy it every year? I feel like if you're looking for, the thing is sad, I think that if it came in 2 ounces instead of your 4 ounce, I think I'd be more apt to buy it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I doubt very seriously if this 4 ounce of Thanksgiving Day is going to get smoked up
We'll have it
by
again for
next
next year.
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
So we're going to get a little bit into the history of Thanksgiving. Now that we're probably going to go over a lot of the inner details, but we're going to try to cover a lot of just the message, of why do we celebrate Thanksgiving on the fourth Thursday of November every year. It sort of all starts with the English Reformation. Which, all that business. I don't know how much you know about the English Reformation.
I know it has a lot to do with, I think, Henry VIII.
Yeah, Henry VIII.
And his need to separate his spouse from him.
Yeah. Which, is really, if that had never happened, I don't know what would have happened as far as Christianity goes. Like, I'm sure that the Protestant movement would have happened eventually, but would it happen the same way? I don't know.
Hadn't the Protestant Reformation already kicked off in earnest?
Well, yes, but I think that was a kick. Like that was a big thing, though. Like, that's sort of because before that, was there any backing? Was there any governmental backing behind it? Because
I doubt it. But
I think that
after Martin Luther
Yeah.
hung up his 95 theses or 98 theses,
Yeah.
he was pretty much persona non grata for the church. They I think excommunicated him, and then through Luther's sort of all the stuff he came out, what was his big thing was about plenary indulgences. Once he took a step down from the Catholic Church, they were pretty much like, well, you're going to hell. And then essentially religion, as far as Christianity was concerned in Europe, became a lot of infighting.
Yes.
Which broke off into other things. So we're familiar with Catholics, Lutherans, Protestants, but I think Calvinists also kind of came out, and then everything sort of expanded from that. You're going to see your Methodists, and to a certain extent, I think even Anabaptist, Baptists.
Yeah. It's. I guess there's a lot there. There's a lot of context to this, but really, as it relates to Thanksgiving, so basically prior to 1536, there was 95 or so church holidays, including the 52 Sunday, obligatories, requirements. And so a big thing was to take that down, because I think at that point in time, if it was a holiday, you went to church that day. So you're talking 150 times a year you have to go to church.
It's almost half the year.
Yeah. And so, and of course, and the people were required to pay for these extravagant celebrations that would be a part of the church, of that holiday. But after...
I'm assuming pay through tithing, though, right?
I'm assuming so. I don't really know. I would assume, but yeah. Basically, they were required to attend church and forego works and sometimes pay for... So when they normally should be working to make money, they were having to attend church and, tithe to pay for the event. But then there was some reforms in 1536. So they dropped it from 95 church holidays to 27 church holidays. And then, of course, some of the Puritans still wanted Christmas and Easter to be removed as well, but that didn't happen. So what happened was a lot of the holidays were replaced with two things: days of fasting and then days of Thanksgiving. Days of fasting were more about unexpected, like a drought happened out of nowhere, or a huge hurricane or whatever came through and just tore up the whole town, you'd have a day of fasting to sort of mourn all that. But
Excuse me.
but if there was like some kind of special blessing from God, maybe a good harvest that year, it would be a day of Thanksgiving.
Huh.
So, and that wasn't, again, set to one day. It was just anytime.
It was
that
just
would
a
happen.
name given to something that could be ceremoniously celebrated.
Yes. Now, so the practice of an annual day, that began in 1606, following the failure of that gunpowder plot. And so, of course, that developed into Guy Fawkes Day on November 5th. So that's sort of where Thanksgiving sort of got its makings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there's other parts. Of course, we went over like a lot. We skipped a lot of stuff, a lot of the little minutia of it, but there's still a lot to tell because now we're getting into what we know as Thanksgiving today, U.S. history.
So Guy Fawkes was 1606.
6.
So if you fast forward
Well, it was 1605. The year after is when they started doing. 1606 is when they started doing the annual Thanksgiving
Right.
because of the failure of the gunpowder plot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at 1606 as your inaugural Thanksgiving,
It almost lines up
right?
with the American.
Well,
The Pilgrims.
because 1621 is the Thanksgiving of the Americas,
Yes.
for what is understood. But if you look at 3 years after 1606, the British Thanksgiving, and then you relocate to the United States, but in this case Jamestown colony,
Yeah.
1609. What you're seeing is like pretty much the year of like I don't even know what like famine basically. Jamestown was what people don't understand about Jamestown because everyone thinks, oh, the Pilgrims they were kind of destitute and hungry, and they really didn't know what they were getting into. As a matter of fact, like we weren't even 100% sure, I think, at the beginning if colonies were going to survive because there wasn't anything to survive with. Not only that, but like the horrors of the early 1600s being that there were like massive winters. There was a little ice age that had actually, cropped up. I mean, it was bitter cold. Jamestown was starving. I think they lost in 1609 about 100 settlers, to the point that like in recent modern archaeology is discovered, even though it was hinted at in writings, we've actually got empirical proof that there was cannibalism in Jamestown.
Oh, really?
That time. Yeah. So I mean,
Sure.
so it's 1609, 1621. So you're looking at what 11, 12 years later that you have the first Thanksgiving. But in 1609, I mean, it was so bad that they were digging up corpses, they were eating horses, they were eating dogs, they were eating vermin, and they were eating the bodies of the deceased and butchering the living. They just recently did some, I guess, what is it called? Like an autopsy, I guess, on a corpse, and the knife and cuts in the bones, and on the, I guess, like what is remaining of their, the remainder of their remains.
Mm-hmm.
The knife markings are line up with butchering, in which they would have definitely eaten like her thighs and her buttocks, her cheek. They would have sliced through the bone. This is like a 14-year-old girl that they butchered and cannibalized in Jamestown. I mean, it's something that like people really don't take note of because I think it's sort of historically kind of like hush hush. But it was definitely, I mean, it was naturally, if you've resorted to cannibalism, that there is issues within your colony.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't go away either. I mean, to the point that like Thanksgiving had to happen. I mean, Jamestown was pretty much a failure. Naturally, if you've resorted to cannibalism, you're not making it.
Yeah. What year did this cannibalism happen?
Well, it probably between the years of 1609 and 16,
Okay.
probably 20.
Because it's looking like the earliest signs of a Thanksgiving being held in Virginia was 1610. So, well, Thanksgiving services, as we were talking about how you would have one, in different times.
Well, perhaps the first, traditional Thanksgiving meal was long pig instead of ham.
Good Lord. So it's a muddled history there.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine being in like third grade learning that, Thanksgiving isn't just about Native Americans and Pilgrims. It's about cannibals.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's that's the thing is like what you don't know. I mean, like I don't think that they would be thankful that they butchered and ate a 14-year-old.
Now, you were talking about digging up corpses? Was the 14-year-old girl already dead from something?
I don't know if the article went too terribly into detail, but I think from what I gather is she was alive. But there is probably evidence to support the fact that and evidence that would probably be such. The thing is like cannibalism in and of itself is so taboo that alive or dead, I mean, you're at that scaling where it doesn't matter at that point. You're still eating human flesh.
Now, granted, that's disgusting to me, but just me being me, I'm like, well, if they're already dead, what's it? Like, I can take that more.
Well, I know there's a kind of a moral kind of aspect to it
because you're not murdering anybody; they're already dead. They died for something else, like
naturally. I mean, they died of like some sort of natural, maybe not natural causes, but they died. So the guilt really isn't on you if you slaughtered the individual.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty horrific. If you slaughtered them and then ate them,
that's rough.
That's pretty intense, but like. At the same time,
You're still eating.
Either death of natural causes, like exposure or something, probably to that extremity, versus death of human slaughter, manslaughter, murder in the first degree kind of thing.
Jeez.
I can see like kind of the moral gray area of just eating a corpse that's already deceased versus. Like pretty much like it's biblically practiced immoral to murder. And honestly I don't know what the Bible has to say about cannibalism, but I'm pretty sure that like it's pretty universal that cannibalism's taboo.
That is an interesting thing. Like I wonder if the Bible makes a distinction. Well, I mean, did they talk about cannibalism in the Bible?
The closest thing I can come to in relational metaphorical is the bread body metaphor that Christ says, this is my body, this is my blood, and the wine. And then once you take it, it like transubstantiates into...
It becomes that at that moment.
That's what I understand some people believe.
Yeah.
I think to Baptists, it is pretty much...
It's just a representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the Catholic Church, it's believed that is happening at that moment, that it is becoming that.
As of consumption, it does literally become the body.
Well, I think it's prior to consumption. I think it's when it is consecrated by the priest.
Oh, okay.
So when the bread and the wine is brought to the priest, that's what it is, and then all that happens, and then they raise it up, and then the bells ring 3 times. That's it becoming flesh and blood at that moment. So,
but either way, that's the only form of like cannibalistic, leanings that the Bible might even talk about, and that's not even. But to me, it's all metaphorical, naturally. But that's the closest thing I can relate to. I know that there were some. I think there was some really insane stuff in the Old Testament, and then if I'm not mistaken, Ezekiel or Daniel, there was a point at which the Jews were in Babylon, and it would talk about their children being eaten by their parents and stuff like that because they were going through this like super horrible time.
God.
So that there was that. But I mean, these are like, I don't think that in terms of like being like, thou shalt not eat of the flesh of another or something like that, I don't think that there was anything
stated.
that I remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in Leviticus. If you're gonna, I'm sure it's somewhere in Leviticus. But like as far as actual commentary on cannibalism, outside of the metaphorical transubstantiation of Christ's body and blood from wine and bread, or the kind of apocalyptic scenario of Ezekiel Daniel. I can't think of anything in terms of cannibalism.
That's wild. So moving along, like you were saying, the first, what's observed as the first Thanksgiving, that was in 1621. It was in October of 1621. A little bit different than what it is now, but then it was in October. The feast lasted for 3 days. Let's see here. 90 Native Americans and 53 Pilgrims. Now, a side note, there's a difference between a Puritan and a Pilgrim. A Puritan is an English Protestant in the 16th, 18th century, blah, 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 who sought to purify the Church of England of Roman Catholic practices, maintaining that the Church of England had not been fully reformed and needed to become more Protestant. Puritanism played a significant role. Okay, whatever. Now, Pilgrims, just a little bit different. I think they are a version of the Puritans, but they're a little bit different. They are more, I think more people know about them is that they were leaving because of, what's the word, persecution in England.
Yeah, I think they were a little too extreme.
Yeah, they went further along the route.
So they left.
Yeah,
across the Atlantic.
Which the best idea I can picture of how these people were probably the colony and the witch. It sort of puts me in mind of people like that, unless I'm getting my centuries wrong.
No, that's about accurate.
But
Eggers is pretty accurate too. His depiction of things is pretty
really
accurate. Yes.
Now,
the director. So what we're talking about is The Witch, a film that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
By I can't remember his last name.
Roger Eager.
Yeah. Is it Eager? I thought it was Eggers. So
maybe it's Eggers. Yeah. So it's now I can't remember. Did they leave the colony because the family was more extreme than the colony?
In The Witch, yes, he was basically so. My very, very limited. So when I say this, guys, if you're listening for any type of historical accuracy, like I do recommend that you go either check against everything that I'm saying or read for yourself. So this is very limited. I've not spent a lot of time studying early American history, which would have covered like the 17th, 18th centuries. Before even our revolution. I haven't dived into that. But from what I can tell, even to a certain extent, the colonies still had, and I'm gathering this from a couple of different books that I've read in the past. I think one was actually called White Trash, which is about classism in early to late American society. But there were forms of classism in puritanical or like pilgrim colonies, in which even where you sat in the pew in the church had relevance to your stature within the township or the hamlet or whatever, the colony itself. And then there were elders and other people, learned people. And then of course, like in and of itself, built into those systems, and those are probably people who actually had money and they still were suffering probably. But of that percentage, they had indentured servants and people who wanted to come. I mean, like the economy was based on free labor to a certain extent, even before African slaves showed up. Indentured service was a way to get a free trip to the New World. Now, granted, the difference between African slaves versus indentured servants is like indentured servants were contractually obligated to be slaves until the debt had been paid. So you would gather the funds to bring them to America, say, and then they were contractually obligated to you for X amount of years. And then once those years expired, you were basically given kind of like a writ to a freedom, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then you were no longer obligated to whoever that we'll say account manager was. But that's the way the economy was sort of ran. I mean, it was all experimentational up front. It wasn't until later that they discovered that, like, their cash cropping, in this case, tobacco. Welcome to Pipecast, right? That a cash crop like tobacco could actually push them forward into, a more stabilized economy.
And so in The Witch, this family is sort of...
They
don't like the hierarchy.
Yeah, they're confronting the norms, which would be the hierarchical. I guess I think he's addressing several leaders.
Yes.
In one instance, and in that case, he would have probably been banned from the town. See, the thing about that too is if you can actually see it in the film. Roger Eggers said clearly in the part where I think the son might be named Caleb or something. They're clearly talking about election, Calvinism, like the elect, because there is a sort of a spiritual existential crisis about the young lad when he's hunting with his father about how does he know who the elect is and if they're predestined to go to heaven or not. And there's this kind of like philosophic back and forth where the father's sort of trying to pacify the son by saying like, that God knows kind of thing, like that kind of like catch-all answer. But like, how do you know who the elect is? That's one of the drawbacks to talking to Calvinists because they do believe in elect or a predestination. For some reason, like it always seems like when you talk to them that they consider their family a part of the elect. And well, how do you know that? Like, and it's like, well, they just are. It's like, well, I mean, are they? I mean, you're saying they're elect, and they are they? Yeah. It's kind of it's convoluted because then you got to start throwing in like free will, and then deeds start taking it into effect, and not to get religious, but like you can see how like there could be like metaphysical like paradoxes all rattled in there. So the point is that Eggers does a fine job of like kind of displaying like common sentiment around religion and sort of taming the wild, bucking against authority, and a lot of things that happen. I mean, even in of itself, a witch is an outsider to an outsider. Yeah. I mean, because the family is now excommunicated. Persona non grata, removed from town, ran out on a rail. Yeah. And then the witch is the outsider to the outsiders. Like I always found that kind of interesting about that film. But yes, I think that to say that it's like a puritanical society is pretty accurate.
Well, sort of to wrap that in, getting back to like the main difference between these Pilgrims and Puritans is, they really the big difference is Pilgrims felt like they should be separate from the Church of England, like the English state church, like they wanted to be something different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the big difference between those two. So fast forward a little bit.
Before you say that, I was going to say this is like you can probably see that overriding sentiment coming out in our separation of church and state kind of philosophy.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of that sticks like, and that's the thing I think about religion and history and trial and error, that humans may not get it right all the time, but I mean parts of it are right and last. Sentiments last. That I don't think Calvinists are that big of a population anymore. Like I don't know. I wouldn't think.
I think that philosophy still exists. I think like as far as Calvinism is concerned, like it's still.
But I don't think there's that many that follow. I mean, I've never met a Calvinist, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't feel like that is the overarching idea of Christianity in my world, or the world I'm in Southeast America.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that's a big thing anymore. But the idea of separating keeping church and state separate is still a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that like if that's where they came from.
Yeah.
If the Pilgrims left because they couldn't reform the church more drastically, and then they just wanted to separate themselves away from the Church of England in general, and then they thought that there was some sort of like issue with government and religion presiding over them. It's interesting because you're talking about Jamestown in 1609, and then like almost 170 years later, you've got, Declaration of Independence and like basically the structuring of our entire society in 1776 onward. And that sentiment's still there by separating them out.
Yeah. Now, sort of shooting a little bit forward, the big, getting a little bit more into Thanksgiving as we know it, the interesting thing that I did not know is that it is celebrated. Well, everybody knows it's celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what's happened. And that all started, what was really crazy is it started happening, it was on and off, since like 1789. So, about, how many years removed from the American Revolution is that?
1779, you said? 3 years?
89,
so 13 years?
Well, so George Washington basically had a proclamation that he sort of started a little bit of it. Thomas Jefferson, actually, I love Tommy J. Tommy J is my guy. But he chose not to observe it. And so it did not get celebrated again until Abraham Lincoln's presidency. So that around that time it picked back up. And then, let's see here, it became a federal holiday in 1863, which that's, pretty good timing. I mean, you're in the midst of a civil war.
Is there a reason why Lincoln picked it back up?
Probably.
Is it just like one of those things where it's like the nation needs something to observe during its time of war?
Yeah, I think that's definitely it. It was a way to sort of not like necessarily like keep everybody like from thinking about the war, but I mean I think that had a part to play. I mean when you have a nation that just less than 100 years prior gained its independence. Now you're squabbling between one another. Mm-hmm. It's like, you got to right the ship some way. If this war is lasting a while. So 1863, the war started in 61.
I mean, it's pretty crazy because 1861 would have been the start of the war.
Yeah.
You haven't even made your centennial yet.
Yeah. So I think that there's a book I read called Anatomy of Revolution where it talks about like sparking things. It talks about the British. I don't know if you would call it a revolution, but what happened with the Irish and Oliver Cromwell and everything, and then the execution of a king, and then you look at the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the Bolsheviks Revolution. There's something to be said for the way things start up and nation building in general. From a general historic perspective, I think the standard is that most empires or kingdoms or countries or whatever you want, whatever you feel like calling it, their halfway point is civil war. Which is interesting. Like, we hadn't even gotten 100 years in and we already had a civil war. And then to think, since then, we've gone,
We've gone on. Technically we've beaten it. But remember, we're still technically in that halfway. Technically we're still at the other end of the halfway mark,
Yeah.
So, as far as like dissolving, that's the way nation or these kinds of things happen. So
yeah,
that would suck. But
so what's unique about when Abraham Lincoln brought it back is it was to be celebrated on the last Thursday in November. Now, this was something new to me. Sometimes, now I know October is notorious of having 5. It usually always has 5 weeks in it. But sometimes there are 5 Thursdays in November. So during this time, if it was a year where there was 5 Thursdays, Thanksgiving would be on that 5th Thursday.
Right.
Now, when FDR took over, he did a little bit of changing. He changed it from being the last to being the second to last. But then that shortly changed back in 1941. So from 42 onwards, it is the 4th Thursday in November.
FDR had a way of tinkering with things, I suppose.
Yeah. But that is that was something news to me. I'd always knew. See, my mother's birthday is the 24th, and a lot of times it falls on her birthday. But like, I looked the other day. I think we'll have 5 Thursdays in November in like 2020 or 2021. I think 2021. I think. So that'll be a time where, guess what? It's not going to be the last like we're usually accustomed to. It'll happen a week out. But that's just some of the sort of neat, interesting things about the history of it. Now, getting a little bit more into the traditions. Yeah, so I think we had a little bit of problems there, technical difficulties. I don't know exactly where we lost audio, but I think it was around where we were talking about traditions. So,
I know we just mentioned something about FDR.
Yeah. Just him tinkering with stuff. And changing the dates. But, when it comes to Thanksgiving, food is what we talk about now. I mean, I really think food overshadows the actual, message of giving thanks and celebrating with family. It's like, what are you going to eat today? What are we having?
Well, holidays have a tendency to be passive, and over time, they have a passive kind of moral that seems to come along with them, or some, in this case, giving thanks. Christmas, it would be the birth of Christ, but they're really overshadowed by the sort of gluttonousness or of the holidays themselves. And I don't even mean just in overindulging. I mean, even Christmas to a certain extent is feasting, candy, presents, gluttony. It really is. A lot of people nail Christmas for being overly consumeristic and really not really having any sort of purpose other than just buying things, baubles, really, just nothing really important. But Thanksgiving has its own demons, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, so everybody knows, we got turkeys. Turkey's a big meal. I mean, it's such a big part of Thanksgiving meal that some people refer to it as Turkey Day. That's
right.
That's a big thing. And sometimes it comes. Now again, this is U.S. Thanksgiving. There is a Canadian Thanksgiving and there's other Thanksgiving. Excuse me. There's a lot going on. So since we're in the U.S., since we're specifically in the Southeast U.S., we're talking what we know.
What we know to be true.
So normally turkeys can be roasted and stuffed or deep fried. Now, and we're in the Southeast, so I mean, we deep fry water.
Yeah, we do.
We're gonna make that joke work.
That joke is gonna work one day.
So if you laughed at that joke, you better let us know. Let us know. We'll get into that later. Deep fried. That's a typical popular option. I mean, I've had it roasted. I've had it deep fried. Mm-hmm. Now I've never had a turducken at Thanksgiving. I've never had a turducken in general. Have you?
No, I mean I've only ever had a fried turkey, really. I've had a roasted turkey. They're not good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fine.
I've had a lot of smoked ones.
Tons of smoked ones.
Yeah.
If you're not smoking, you're frying. If you're not frying, you're smoking. That's the way I feel like it is in the South.
Yeah.
If you go deep South, New Orleans,
mm-hmm.
I do think that I've I think they oven roast everything. Like, it's crazy. You would think that they were frying.
Yeah.
I've talked to at least 3 different people who are just like, yeah, we put it in the oven, we do all this and this and this, because I think they have more claim to French cuisine, and I think it actually lends to that. So I think true New Orleans natives have a tendency to roast, which is crazy.
Yeah. That's a weird thing because our idea of New Orleans doesn't lean that way. But then, like you said, when you get into that, there's a lot of French, stuff going on there. It's like, okay, well, I guess that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terribly surprising to me because you go down there and they're like, oh, you like duck confit? I'm like, not particularly, but that's pretty much like, what is it? Simmered in a duck fat reduction with thyme and star anise and like all kinds of stuff for 24 hours and then oven roasted. Just the fact that you had to put it in the oven after you simmered it, really does kind of lend itself to being like, yeah, they probably roast their turkeys. No, I'm not saying everyone. If you're from the New Orleans area, I'm sure you're frying, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, from what I've been told here lately, it seems like a lot of people do oven. And I think that has a lot to do with their French connection.
To sort of put on the point of, turkey is a big thing. In Thanksgiving of 2015, I know we're 4 years removed, but I mean, that's the stats I was given. 4 million turkeys were consumed, about $1 billion worth of turkeys sold.
Better contact PETA.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get into that. Well, I don't want to get into any of that. So continue on with food. Usually there's mashed potatoes and gravy, stuffing, of course, sweet potatoes, sweet potato casserole, lumpy, of course.
Mm-hmm. We're having a whole debacle in my family right now about lumpy versus cream sweet potato casserole.
Now, when you say lumpy, you're talking about the potatoes hadn't been all the way smushed?
That's right.
Now, do you ever eat lumpy potatoes at all? Because I sort of like lumpy mashed potatoes.
I do not. The only lumpy potato I've ever had and consumed in its entirety is a baked potato that it has barbecue on it. For some reason, that's passable. Because, really, if you think about it, a baked potato, if smashed and then added some cream, you got mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
So, if you add butter, sour cream, I guess is a form of cream, cheese, barbecue, chives, bacon, mush that together, add some white sauce, then you got a barbecue baked potato, and it is technically lumpy. The only difference between mashed potatoes and then gourmet mashed potatoes, which has the skin on them, and a baked potato is, I assume, the consistency of the potato itself, what is added to it, and then if you're consuming the skin or not. Which, ironically enough, when I eat a baked potato, I eat everything. Like, there's no potato left. There's just aluminum foil when I'm done with it.
I'll leave a little bit, but I'll eat some of the skin. Mm-hmm. And the skin's good, man.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I actually eat the skin first. I eat around the potato and then wrap the potato up.
Interesting.
So, it's kind of a weird way of approaching it. Maybe I don't. Like, I sort of just, I don't know how I do it. It's. I just know that when I'm done, there's nothing left. So.
The mystery of how Zach eats his potatoes. But yeah, your family's having a debacle between. So some people want the lumpy, some people want the creamy.
Communists want the lumpy.
Well, hold on now. Don't be double down in that.
I don't mind saying it. Like, I'm not even 100% sure I have a brother. Like, after he made the statement of wanting lumpy sweet potato casserole,
but your dad
pretty much made the assumption that he was adopted.
But your dad agreed.
I'm pretty sure he's not my father.
So really, you're the adopted one.
I still could come from my mom.
What? Well, milkman.
That's right. And what would the milkman do? He'd add cream, and he would smash it too. It's creamy. That's the way. That is. So in a way, yes, the milkman is my father.
I've actually never paid enough. Wait, is it sweet potato casserole? I don't even eat that much, but I've never paid attention enough to really know if I've had lumpy or creamy. I'm not a sweet potato guy. They're fine, but I'd rather eat just
sweet
plain
potato casserole is great. It's kind of interesting because I hear people talking about sweet potato pie. I'm assuming this is my sweet potato pie. This is as close as it gets. There was actually a kind of a weird debate that we had the other day at work. I think you might have been involved, where it was like, is it sweet potato pie or is it basically sweet potato cobbler? Like,
No, I was not in that.
I don't remember where that came from, but we put brown sugar and pecans and we bake it until
See.
it has a crust on top. And like, in a way, isn't that a cobbler?
Yeah, I mean,
So, I mean, you know.
But I mean, okay, we'll get into the differences of desserts later. But I say that because that's why I'm not a big sweet potato person, because it's always put with the main dishes, and to me, it's a dessert. It's too sweet to be put with the main dishes. Same with the strawberry crap that's usually there. I don't know what
The strawberry pretzel stuff?
No, that's usually at the dessert table. I'm talking about, it's like a pink.
Oh, strawberry fluff?
Maybe. It's always with the main course as well. I'm like, that's dessert. Like, what are y'all doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's probably why. And then by the time it is dessert time, I'm like, well, I don't want no sweet potato casserole.
Well, I think the thing is like, I always eat the sweet potato casserole last, as if it were a dessert, because I've treated it as a dessert. Yes, I mean, like, it's like the way it works is like I can tell you 100% how I start. 2 rolls are made into a ham sandwich and a turkey sandwich. Then I'm automatically starting with chicken. What?
Go continue.
Chicken. What's it called? Chicken stuffing or whatever.
Yeah.
Chicken casserole.
Chicken and dressing.
Chicken and dressing. Thank you. With cranberry sauce. That's the way I start.
Okay.
And as I'm slowly making my way through it, I'm also eating mac and cheese and potatoes at the same time. Then I switch to my ham and turkey sandwiches, dipped in mashed potatoes and usually gravy or something like that. And
White gravy or brown gravy?
Brown.
Oh yeah, I've never had white on.
I've never had white with mashed potatoes.
Is that a thing?
I only eat sawmill with biscuits.
Yeah,
same. For
here.
me, in the morning, it's sawmill gravy and biscuits, or it's red eye gravy and biscuits. And the only reason I get red eye usually during this time of year is because I baked a ham beforehand.
I mean, I agree with you. That's sort of how I eat it. But I'm going to tell you, I like brown gravy better. I would eat brown gravy with biscuits if it was an option. Like, I just love brown gravy.
I feel like it's just a little too salty.
Maybe
and it
so.
doesn't take the pepper as well.
Oh.
I can over pepper the crap out of sawmill gravy and it's fine.
Yes. I agree. I've never attempted this, but I'm just saying.
But, so, after I get done with the sandwiches and the mashed potatoes, which I'm kind of consuming at the same time, usually I'll wrap up the mac and cheese. I eat the sweet potato casserole last. Every once in a while, I'll probably swing in a fork just to try a little taste, just to kind of get the salt out of my mouth, you know?
Yeah.
And then as soon as I get done with the sweet potato casserole, I stand up, I dispose of whatever plate I'm having. I usually don't get seconds. I go right to the table and get a coconut pie slice. I eat the coconut pie slice, then I get 2 more ham slices, make another sandwich, have 2 more bites of coconut pie and sweet potato casserole out of the dish, which I usually get in trouble for. I have to like kind of look around because I don't want to make a plate, so I'll just like kind of swing a fork in there and dirty it up because I'm an animal.
Yeah, you are an animal
And
based
then,
on what you...
Yeah, and then they yell at me. And then by that time, it doesn't matter anyway because I've, like, you know, lethargy is, like, grasped onto my mind and I'm passed out on the couch, usually, like, halfway through the sports breed of the dog show.
Okay. You're not going to get a detailed answer from me because it just varies every year. It's whatever shows up. I don't eat ham. I'll have the slice every now and again. I'm just not a big ham man. So I usually go with the turkey. Unless the turkey's too dry, then I swap that to the side. I'm big on like deviled eggs, mashed potatoes, like a pasta salad or like a what's it called? Like a corn salad and like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like cheesy potatoes.
I like broccoli casserole too.
Broccoli casserole, any kind of casserole, I am on it. Except for I may get a little dab of sweet potato casserole just to try a bite and be like, no, that's a dessert, and put it back down. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm big on the sides. Like my plate has more sides than it's got meat. Like 5 times as much sides as there is meat.
What I love about my mom's sweet potato casseroles, there are no marshmallows in sight whatsoever. It is brown sugar crusted with pecans.
You don't like marshmallows?
I was raised on brown sugar and pecans with sweet potato. Like, it's just so much better. Now, there's nothing wrong with... There is absolutely nothing wrong with marshmallows. As a matter of fact, the greatest thing in the world is a toasted marshmallow with a melted Hershey and graham cracker. That is A s'more is amazing.
Yeah.
And a toasted marshmallow just is, it's got a crunch, but it's also creamy. I mean, everything about it is delicious. I just don't put it on my sweet potatoes. I don't feel like it works for me. Have I had it before? Yes. Is it fun? Yes. Will I eat it again? Yes. Am I going to complain? No. Do I prefer that? No. I prefer...
If you had the option...
If I had the option, it'll be brown sugar and pecans.
It's funny you talk about that. I've just recently gotten big into Rocky Road ice cream. Mm-hmm. And I think, is it Haagen-Dazs or something like that? Mm-hmm. I think it's that brand. I love the marshmallow in that ice cream because I'm a soft serve guy. Like if I buy a Breyers, ain't that the brand of ice cream? Breyers. Mm-hmm. If I
sorry, it's just funny to eat as much ice cream as you're describing right now and to not know the brand name is just kind of funny.
It's just like, hey, it's ice cream. Let's go. Mm-hmm. Ice cream's ice cream. Frozen yogurt ice cream. I don't care if it's cold and it's soft. I'm like it. But if I get a Breyers. It's usually too hard for me, and I ain't wasting time putting it in the microwave or sitting it down, letting it get soft. I ain't got time for that. I take 3-4 scoops, put it in this bowl. We have these. My mother had these bowls, and she's giving them to me now. They're basically like oversized coffee mugs, so they got a little handle on them. Fill that up with ice cream as much as I can, and I just churn it with my spoon until it's soft serve. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, now we're ready to roll. But with this particular Rocky Road, it gets soft real quick, and I'm eating it, and then you'll hit a pocket of marshmallow, and it is so creamy and so just wow, it just blows my mind every time.
See, that's interesting because with this sounds like a Rocky Road with fluff.
Yes,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
the Rocky Road that I grew up with, I have to try whatever you're talking about, but the Rocky Road I grew up with was basically the mini marshmallows you put in hot chocolate.
Yes.
They just douse them with that.
Oh,
so then
it's
you
just
hit
in
these
there?
and then you hit these hard nuggets of marshmallow that are frozen because they're very airy and they just kind of harden up in the ice cream.
That's weird.
So it's almost like it's not a crunch because that would be kind of nice if it was like a freeze dried situation where it kind of crunch and you're like, okay, so I got the flavor of marshmallow, but I don't have to worry. No, this is like hard bubble gum that has been in one of those Kiwanis Club things. It's got a nickel slot on it. You throw it in there, you get 30 pieces, and then it's just eating a brick, and then you just spit it out. And for some reason, the gum hasn't become this chewed mass. It's just a bunch of broken pieces of candy. It's just the gum is just horrible. You're like, how long has this been in here? And they're like, that stand's been there since 1955. And you're like, does no one change? Does the Kiwanis Club not change out the gum? And they're like, no, they don't,
So that's the kind of Rocky Road you're used to.
That's what I'm used to.
I would suggest trying this because it's just little pockets of just sporadic throughout. And you'll be getting several bit of ice cream. You'll get a nut every now and again or a chunk of chocolate. Mm-hmm. And then you'll hit that pocket. And it just you'll know when you hit it too because the spoon will just dive right through it. And you're like, oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm getting sexual about this. It's so good. But
I love that they've developed marshmallow toppings that are actually runny. You can actually put on a sundae or something like that. I don't know if marshmallows really goes with a sundae. I like the taste of marshmallow.
Yeah, marshmallows are good. I couldn't see myself. Okay, I love pickles, right? I could sit down and eat a whole jar of pickles. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't see myself sitting down and eating a whole jar of marshmallow fluff. But, I mean, don't test me.
I think I gained a lot of my early college weight because I ate marshmallow fluff with Ritz crackers.
Oh, really?
It was weird, man. But, the combination of salty cracker with fluff just made my day. I remember because my grandfather stocked it for some reason. He had fluff and he had Ritz crackers. So, naturally, when you go to some place like that, if you grew up on, kid movies, you want to go to Chips Ahoy and fluff. Well, you don't have Chips Ahoy. So what's the next best thing? Well, I want something round for some weird reason. So I went to Ritz. And for some reason, the Ritz cracker and the fluff at that time in my life, and it just sounds sick now. I can't even think about eating that as much as I did. You just think about it and you're like, good Lord. I'm actually kind of getting a little anxious about Thanksgiving tomorrow because I know I'm going to be consuming food.
Which is about all this is.
Yeah.
Getting back a little bit on track, there's, again, cranberry sauce, sweet corn, squash, Brussels sprouts, pumpkin pie. I know we sort of had a not an argument, but a disagreement. Like, I'm not a cranberry sauce man. I don't do it. I don't fool with
Your
that
story about why you don't like that is probably the funniest.
Well, okay. Well, before I tell my story, I want you to tell about what you said about you'll eat it anyway. You want it coming out of the can with the little rings around it still in it.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, ultimately, cranberry sauce is cranberry sauce, but, like, the cranberries, I mean, like, anything that you're going to serve up, you know, everyone has their traditional thing that they like. You know, some people like homemade, where they actually make literal cranberries into a sort of sauce jam, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. I've had it. It's good. I like the flavor of cranberry. What I grew up with was the canned cranberry sauce that comes out in a gelatinous blob. It's got the ribbings, like it's been working out all year to get to Thanksgiving. You know, it's got that rib section right down the side. And you know where to slice because you're going to slice right on those ribs, you know. But it looks like it's going to beat you up and take your lunch money. It's just this nasty looking thing. Now, the interesting thing is just like, I don't mind eating the discs. There's nothing like hokey about that. But I do think that it's kind of weird because it almost it seems more presentable if you slice it into discs and serve it as the disc. So in other words, if the gelatinous form comes out in the shape of a can and you cut the can down into like little discs, that's what I'm used to seeing. It does seem more presentable if you mush it with a fork for some reason, and it's kind of like of a jam-mier consistency. Yeah. But I'm used to the disc. Like I'll have a ton of chicken and dressing, also one disc, and then a half disc. I'm an animal, so I just cut one of the discs in half and throw it on there. And somehow, usually that purple sludge gets into my sweet potato stuff, but I don't really care because at that point, once I've made it to the sweet potato, like I'm just like, oh, I like sugar, and I'm just eating away. Yeah. But 1.5 discs, good portion of chicken and dressing, ham and turkey sandwich, and then mac and cheese and mashed potatoes with gravy.
The problem that one of the problems that I've had with cranberry sauce is that it's not a sauce. Now, there are versions that are sauce, but what you're talking about, the typical, that ain't a sauce.
No, it's not.
It's not. But so the reason why I don't...
But I don't know what to call it because it's always been called cranberry sauce.
It's like, I mean, I don't know,
what
cranberry
it looks
jello?
Like is like you took a bunch of cranberry juice and you added like a coagulant, like rattlesnake venom to it. And then gave it steroids, and then it comes out all ripped up like some sort of crazy cranberry sauce, and then there you go. But like, yeah, I don't know.
So the reason why I don't fool with cranberry sauce, it started back in elementary school, it continued through high school, but the first instance was elementary school. So I was notorious for, I guess, maybe the anxiety of being in the lunch line and like people being behind you and sort of rushing you along. I would see cranberry sauce and I would think it was Jell-O. And I would grab it, get to my table, take a bite, and realize that's not Jell-O. And like it just winged me. I was done from that point on. And the bad thing is, it happened multiple times, like over the course of my school career, that I would accidentally get cranberry sauce and then be like thinking it was Jell-O. That wasn't the only food. Like sometimes I would get corn nuggets or like fried okra, thinking they were tater tots. But I mean, granted, I'm talking about a school cafeteria lunch.
With corn nuggets, I could see 100%.
Yeah.
Fried okra is like, you must have really been getting rushed from behind because like that green sticks out so much even in my head. Of course, I don't care because I love fried okra.
Well, see, I'm super like going back now. I probably wouldn't mind fried okra, but I used to hate fried okra because I love pickled okra. Like I'd eat pickled okra, like stem and all, everything. Toss that back. But I never really messed with fried okra. But coming back now, knowing what I like now, I probably wouldn't mind fried okra.
The weirdest thing about lunches, like I remember because you would have your traditional, but they would have. I could never get beyond pizza and corn.
I know.
That was something that always blew my mind. Like I was like, why does this pair?
It's like, I guess they didn't know what to serve with pizza because, I mean, normally there are no sides with pizza. Well, now I could see chicken wings, right? That's a typical side item to
Yeah, but like, oh yes, sorry, yes. I thought you meant with corn.
No,
But with pizza, yeah, that totally makes sense.
So like
But for some reason, they're not gonna have two meats. It almost felt like they were like, well, we're serving pizza, so that's probably not nutritionally sound. So let's serve the most unnutritional vegetable with it, corn.
Now, I don't know about you, but we had Mexican pizza that was shaped like a stop sign. Did you ever have that?
No.
It was
Maybe
awful.
we did. I don't know.
It was awful. A lot of people think it was good, but they're wrong.
Like, only thing I can remember was the square pizza and corn. That's the only thing I remember. And then, every once in a while you get something really random, like this horrifying. I mean, I remember lunches being so
awful.
Yeah, but like it wasn't like it was a concern to eat it.
Yeah.
Like, I think if I went back now, like a great example of this is my wife and I had kind of an affection for Golden Corral. A Golden Corral is trash.
Yeah.
But like for some reason we just love Golden Corral. I mean, I grew up on like Grinds and Barn Hills and all these other buffets, And they're all terrible. But like now that I have perspective because we've eaten a bunch of different things, right? But when I was young, Golden Corral was the best. And I think the only reason I thought that it was the best is because I like making a hot fudge sundae at the soft serve line. You make the soft serve, you got the swirl, you got the hot fudge, you got the hot caramel, you got the sprinkles, you got the peanuts. I don't even think I really cared to eat regular food. But for some reason, I always thought that like, oh, regular food is really good here too. And then I get a nice little treat at the end. And we went in there and I swear 80% of it was not edible. This is the last couple of years that I was so disappointed. I remember going to the roast beef station and I was like, it looks like you set a pig on fire and we were like, oh crap, we need to serve this. And you just gave it to me, like, or whatever that station is where they have pork loin or something like that. Because I'm like, it's not that the food looked necessarily I guess it does look kind of unpresentable, but it's not in that vein as much as it's just like you get it and you're like, yes, you did definitely throw this in a fireplace and then forgot and then pulled it out and we're like, well, we're also kind of low on budget, so we're serving it. That's what it feels like sometimes.
The crazy thing though is like no matter what kind of buffet I go to, whether it's an Asian buffet or a buffet like a Ryan's or a Golden Corral, I always get the pizza. Even though I know it's some kind of frozen pizza that they put in the oven, it just always tastes better. It's got some good garlic on it. But the funny thing about, so again, me and Zach grew up in the Florence area. And so when I was growing up, you had Ryan's and you had Barn Hills. That's the only two like that you had. But we never went to Barn Hills because my dad swore up and down. He goes, you go in there, you get bruises. Like, we'd go to Ryan's every week, but he would not go to Barn Hills because, like, you get in there, they'll knock you over getting to that food. So, like, we would just never go. I think I went there one time.
And they're not like, there's probably, unless you're in Vegas or someplace that's a little bit more pristine, maybe New York to a certain extent, you're not going to get a buffet that is really worth what you're paying, like, period. I mean, you're getting for what you pay for is what I'm getting at.
I guess unless, if you're going off the How I Met Your Mother train, unless you go to a strip club on Thanksgiving. I guess their buffets are good. But
I've never had a strip club buffet.
I haven't either. I mean, I'm proud to say I haven't had that. The last time I went to a Ryan's was in Gardendale when I was living in Fultondale for a while. And that was just rough. Like, that was an awful experience. Like, and I'm not the pickiest. You know me. I'm not picky about food. I mean, you just give me 2 or 3 fast food chains, I could live for the rest of my life. And you wouldn't hear me be like, man, you know what? This food around here just sucks. I'd just be like, yeah, okay, it's food. But that was awful.
I don't discredit variety.
Yeah.
But I do question interspecies variety. I don't even know how you would say that in food. Like, in other words, like, I'm never going to go to a Chinese buffet and eat pizza, like, ever.
I get it every time, and Ann looks at me and goes, what are you doing? I'm
like, so she has the right interpretation. Like, what are you doing?
She's over here.
Now, the thing is like, the trashy side of me has another issue that like my wife wants to like. There's a part like there's the only thing as of my 8 years of marriage that has ever been called into question is that you talk about Velveeta, you talk about crap, you talk about box mac and cheese, you talk about homemade mac and cheese, you talk about taking penne and 7 cheeses and cottage cheese and you mix it together and you bake it and you got a cheddar layer on top of it.
Yeah.
You take all that stuff, right, and you stack it up against a Barnhill's Golden Corral or Ryan's mac and cheese, like that artificial flavored stuff, and I will pick that KFC, Barnhill's, Ryan's buffet mac and cheese every time. It tastes like real mac and cheese to me. I don't know why. And everyone gives me crap for it. They're like, that is garbage. That is trash land. And I was like, I will eat that every day. That tastes like mac and cheese to me. Like that, there's something about that flavoring. Now, I hate Kraft. Like the box stuff, like the mini noodles, and I hate Velveeta. I hate it. Like I don't like it. And the funny thing is I sort of have an Alzheimer's situation with it because Amanda eats it pretty much regularly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then about every 3 to 5 bowls that she makes, I'm like, hey, you mind if I get a bite of this? And she's like, you hate this, right? And I was like, I mean, do I? And then I eat it, and I go, this is terrible. And she goes, yes, so stop eating it. And this happens every about 5 times she makes it. Like, for some reason, I get this, like, curious, like, maybe this time. Especially when it's Velveeta shells, because they sort of remind me, the coloring very much is reminiscent of what I get at Barnhill's. And I'm like, this time it's going to be different. And I try it, and I go, this is terrible. I want to literally leave the house, go to KFC and because KFC has the most reminiscent of those. But if you're familiar with KFC's mac and cheese or a buffet mac and cheese, that's what I'm used to. It's got to be gloopy, like the noodle.
It's got to be gloopy.
It's just like there's something wrong with it. Like it probably doesn't. Decompose over like the course of a year. You can sit it outside, ants won't touch it. They're like, that's not food. That is the mac and cheese that I want. That's the craving that I get.
Oh my God.
And it is the white trashiest thing. Like every time I bite into it, I'm like, what sounds like a good idea? Like a mobile home. And like I take another bite and I'm just like, you know what? I like meth. Like, and just like I just keep eating it.
Hey baby, give me a Miller Lite. Let's go.
Give me a Miller Lite. Where's that trucker hat that I used to wear all the time? Like,
what I do with my spit can? Where'd that go? Yeah. Okay. Well, we all got our own little tendencies there. Tendencies to white trash, Yeah, I mean, every now and again, I want to put on a NASCAR shirt and some light colored blue jeans and some boots and go to a pool hall and walk out smelling like cigarettes. Drinking beer from a pitcher.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, like, every time I eat that mac and cheese, like, I want to listen to Slipknot and change my last name to Hayes.
If Hayes is listening, we love you.
We love you. We miss you, buddy.
So, moving on to some more traditions of Thanksgiving, there's, of course, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That's a big deal, and I didn't do any research on the history of it because
it's just been around since like
it's in
the
New
early
York.
20th century in New York.
Yeah.
I think they started televising it in like the 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
And then it sort of kind of grew out from there. Like, the floats have gotten out of control. Honestly, I think the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is the only thing that still floats Macy's. Like, I mean, it's ironic that Macy's puts on floats in a parade, and then the thing that floats the company seems to be that parade.
Because I've never once been in a Macy's.
I've been in a Macy's before, and it's like any Belk, Parisians, JCPenney.
Do they still have Parisians?
Oh, I guess they don't. Parisians is dead. Parisians was bought out by Belk, but like, for some reason I can't differentiate Parisians and Belk.
They used to be in the mall we were.
Yeah,
there wasn't a Macy's in the mall that we grew up with. It was a Parisians and a JCPenney and a Dillard's. I don't know how.
Yeah,
when Dillard's came along and Sears. Well, then that died. But
so, I mean, that's what it's very much like. I mean, it's not upscale. It's not like you're going to a.
But they make you think it. They put on a show.
I mean, they put on a show, but I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I think the difference between Belk and Macy's is probably the difference between Walmart and Target, you know?
Just aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, like, people might feel better about shopping at a Macy's than they do at shopping at Belk or something like that if they're in the South. Because the Belk is a Southern thing.
Yeah, and I never knew that until, like, I think I went to Bridge Street here, and, like, on the side it says real Southern style, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know y'all were targeting. I mean, half of the people you sell to call you Belt. So, like...
Yeah. Well,
or belts or something like that.
I mean, it's
old women who don't know how to say it.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, so I mean that's the way it's been. I mean, I watched the Thanksgiving Day parade for two reasons. The first reason is because as soon as that Santa Claus crosses that finish line, I consider that pretty much Christmas. So it's like, okay, he's crossed the line. As soon as I've eaten the inaugural turkey, then the curtain has been drawn. You are allowed to put up a Christmas tree.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying I'm rushing to do that, but like that is the marker.
That's
like
that's what's acceptable.
I allow Christmas decorations to begin going up. You know,
and music to start being listening to.
Right. I mean, I don't care if you put Halloween decorations up in June, but like for some reason, I want to keep Christmas at least maintained too. I mean, like personally, I think the kickoff is Black Friday because I mean, like, why not? Like after you've eaten a ton and then you just go try to murder people for, you know, a $2 Game Boy. That's the way I look at it. Like, I think Christmas is finally here.
That's sort of where we differ a little bit. I stick to, like, I think holidays have specific months. Like you don't go past those months. Now there are exceptions to the rule. I mean, I don't see putting up fall decorations in September is fine because they're going to last till November. Mm-hmm. Now you sort of spook them up a little bit in October. You sort of get that thing spooky fast.
I was being a little facetious. I mean, I don't really put up.
I mean, August came around, y'all was ready.
We were ready because it's our favorite holiday.
I know.
Like,
it's my
but
favorite
we're not
too,
putting stuff up though.
Yeah,
you know, I'm just shopping for it.
Now, granted,
I know cats that shop for Christmas in September, so it's like
it's frustrating. It is. Yeah. But like, I had to tailor my thing with the revelation of finding out that the 12 days of Christmas, the first day is the 25th. So I'm like, so the 12th day of Christmas is in January. Okay, well, we can extend it to January, a little bit of January. Like, I've had to adjust myself. And I've started to really not care. Like this year, I've been like, you know what? I'm not going to make a more conscious effort. Now, what did make me mad? So 2 years ago, it was October 27th. And I'm driving around downtown Hartselle, Alabama. I want everybody to know the name of this shithouse town. I'm driving around downtown, which they have a fine downtown. I mean, it looks like any old, you know, small town America town. Right. With a little main street. They had the lights up. They were not on, but they were the freaking like snowflake, present, Santa Claus face, wreath hanging on the freaking lampposts. And it is October 27th. Halloween hasn't even got here yet, and you've already hung that crap up. I was really frustrated. But what made me more mad was this year, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get mad about it. Because at least they had like orange coloring and hay like up on the light post, so like it looked Halloween-ish and fallish. And they went ahead and put them up. They didn't have the lights on, and I was fine. That was cool. But, you know, it's November 7th, and I'm going down there, and they're up, but the lights aren't on. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you've already committed. You've put the lights up. Why are they not on? Mm-hmm. Like, the storefronts had their Christmas lights on, and you're not going to put these lights that you've already ruined October with? You're not going to turn them on? Like... What are these people thinking?
Well,
it's just sort of aggravating. And the fact that you go into any old Walmart or Hobby Lobby and Christmas is up in October, sometimes September. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying not to let it bother me this year. I've actually listened to some Christmas music this month because I like Christmas music.
I mean,
but there's a time and place for it.
I've let it go to a certain extent because it seems like I'm just out of the loop now that I've gotten older. I don't watch television, so I don't see the commercials out the gate. Yeah. And I think that's what really kills me.
Yeah.
Is when you're like, you know, you watch it. Let's say I was watching a football game in October, and then it cuts to a family. It's snow. You know what they're doing.
It's an automobile,
right? And it's just like summer.
It's the season of savings event at your local Mercedes-Benz dealership.
Yeah,
like,
whatever.
Get out of here.
Not a fan, but I mean, like, I'm not even a fan. But like I said, the second crosses finish line, Christmas is on.
Yep.
And the second thing is as soon as that Santa Claus crosses and they go, all right, everyone, see y'all next year. Have a good 2019 or whatever. I don't give a crap about this entire parade. I basically hate everything in it. It's just a bunch of lip syncing, a bunch of waving. I don't care. I don't care about those floats, man. Like, that parade could get canceled. But what does matter to me is what happens next. And what happens next is the dog show. And I watched that dog show so religiously that I've actually instilled it in my wife's family to watch that dog show. I think when we started dating, they were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And they're like, Santa Claus is about to cross the finish line. I was like, oh, that's my entrance cue. So I walk in there or whatever, and I sit down on the couch. He waves, they turn off the TV, and I go, what are you doing? Turn it back on right now. The dog show's on. And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, the dog show? The National Dog Show? It's it's like the AKC or the Kennel Club, something. I was like, turn it on. And sure enough, they turned on the dog show. And you could tell that they thought I was joking to a certain extent. And I was not joking. I was dead serious. I was like, I want this dog show on. I'm watching it all the way through. And like I said, like I usually pass out around Sports Breed, and then I wake up for Best in Show, and that's my Thanksgiving.
You have a very I don't feel like you're the only one that does that, but
I love that dog show.
It's awesome.
I mean, it's awesome. The best. I make sure it's recorded too. I go back through the Sports Breed, and I'm like, yeah, that stupid dog. No one cares, But
okay, so that's the parade and the dog show in a nutshell. Sort of another big thing is football. First with pro, I mean, the NFL has been having a game on Thanksgiving every year. Pretty much since the inception of the NFL, there has been an NFL game on Thanksgiving, with the exception of World War II. There wasn't. But and traditionally, there's always 2 games. Here recently, there's been 3 games now. But always the Cowboys and the Lions are always a home team every year. So those 2 are your home teams. You're like, they're dead set. And then, of course, whoever they play. And then there's been a more primetime game that's been brought in lately. So you got 3 pro games. Now college, it's a little different because usually here lately there's been more of a putting games on Thanksgiving, but most time there's usually Black Friday games. I know that. Well, before I get into that, most time Thanksgiving is like rivalry week for college football teams. So like the big ones are, of course, the Apple Cup between Washington and Washington State, the Civil War between Oregon and Oregon State, the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. Now, of course, there's others too. But I know for a while they were experimenting the Iron Bowl on Black Friday. And I remember one particular one because it is one where Alabama, I was watching it, and I had to go to work at halftime, or shortly after halftime. But Alabama was up like 21-0. And that was your like Cam Newton came back and they won after halftime. Auburn ended up winning. But the way I remember that is because at halftime was the breaking news that like Tiger Woods had been beaten by his wife. Mm. That was the same year. But yeah, so here lately, I think they've started putting some games on Thursday. But yeah, it's a big rivalry week thing for college football. But that's a big thing, all across America. I mean, no matter if you're in the Southeast, the Midwest, it's a big thing. Now, granted, it varies. Like in the Southeast, the college stuff is a lot more prominent, a lot more watched. The Midwest and the West is probably a little bit more pro leaning. Watching the Packers and all them people, mm-hmm. and the Bears, all those. I mean, people watch that all the time. But yeah, and then now naturally, it's football on Thanksgiving, it's basketball on Christmas. So we'll save basketball for
the Christmas
one. Let's see here. Now, we touched on Black Friday. And
The football and Black Friday is kind of where I fall off.
yeah.
I am an internet person. Like, shopping to me is, I don't understand how going and fighting people is interesting. Now, football is fine as long as it's on in the background. I'm just not particularly interested.
Yes.
I just don't have any spirit for anything, you know? I didn't really go to any college that matters.
Yeah.
And then, like, as far as an SEC team or something like that, so I have no dog in that race. And then Black Friday, it's like, I mean, every sale is online. Why wouldn't I order it before and be done with it? I mean, our Christmas was done November 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, I was done shopping November 5th. I mean, it's just done. I'm just done. You know, most of the stuff that you have to get for people is small and thoughtful.
Yes.
So I'm not going to get a Black Friday savings anyway.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm going out for Black Friday is if I can get a 27,000-inch TV for $2. And I'm not going to get it because I'm not going to sleep outside on Thanksgiving in front of some Best Buy.
No.
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, I don't really want to get too much into Black Friday either. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's a time for people to get out and be monsters to one another and it be acceptable. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, you know, it is what it is. We're not going to stay on that too long. Actually, we're moving out right now. Me and Ann, we usually subscribe to the opt-out side for Black Friday. Other people have done it. I know REI is one of the big people that do it. I think now they're doing a little bit more of a coalition of, you know, do more than just opt-out side, sort of like pick up trash and stuff. So yeah, usually me and usually we'll go hiking on Black Friday. Yeah. So we avoid all that and we just go hike. I think last year we did 11 miles and then went and like chowed down on some Asian food. So like it really wasn't even like we gained it all back.
Yeah. And me, it's like, you know, my Black Friday is Thanksgiving part 2. So
okay.
You know, ours rolls in. No one in my family really does Black Friday, so it rolls into the part 2 of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so like my Thanksgiving Day proper is at my in-laws, and then Black Friday Thanksgiving is at my brother's.
Oh, okay.
So like I spend the day at my brother's house, like, you know, and our family is just a bunch of trash talkers. So we talk trash while we cook. Then we eat, we pass out, we wake up, we talk trash, we exit. Like, that's pretty much it, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's really not much for Black Friday. And then, of course, there's, you know, another big thing is charity when it comes to Thanksgiving. You know, it's a time to be, you know, either with food drives or soup kitchens, Salvation Army, things like that. It's, you know, again, it's a time to give thanks and also help others who need it. So that, you know, that's always a big thing, and I think that sort of is what sort of sucks. You know, we talked about it a little bit earlier. That's what sucks about the food and the football and the parades and the Black Friday overshadowing a lot of this, because to me, Thanksgiving's a better holiday than Christmas because you get to be with people and you get to have a good time with your family, you know, people that you love, and there is no obligation of gifts.
No, that's what's so nice about it.
You know,
because it's supposed to be fellowship, I would assume, and I would assume for both to a certain extent. That's why I always think that, like, the smaller, more thoughtful things to show someone that you care. Like the most insulting thing that I can get someone typically is a gift card.
Yeah, but then again, you know, I understand the idea of, hey, I mean, here's your money. I don't know what you want. You know,
that's
more
true,
what you
but
want.
that's the problem. It's like if you didn't know, why are you giving them a gift?
Exactly. So I mean, that's sort of where I've gone to. Like, man, I don't really buy gifts except for like my mom and dad and like my uncles, like because like my siblings don't need anything. Like
Patrick and I swap tobacco, you know, when we do stuff. I mean, it's small. I don't have to worry about it breaking the bank.
Yeah. It's just,
most of the time I don't even have to. I just go back to my reserve and then hand over something. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's real easy. And, you know, eventually I want to get to the point where I'm just, like, making stuff for people. Like Woodworking or leather, whatever. I just want to be able to make something. And then it just, that way it's like, you know, I enjoyed the process of making it, and maybe it'll be useful for you.
Yeah.
That's where I want to get to.
It's more thoughtful.
Yeah.
You definitely put more energy into it too.
Yeah. So that's sort of where I want to get to whenever we get into this new house and all this and get settled in. One last thing about Thanksgiving, it's a little crazy, is turkey pardoning. So that's been a thing since 1947. The National Turkey Federation would present the President of the United States a live turkey and 2 dressed turkeys. And of course, that's where you would eat or whatever. He would, I don't know what he would do. All I know is that JFK was the first president to spare the turkey that was given to him, the live one. And he gave it back to some, I don't know where he gave it to. He gave it to some local something, I don't know. And then Ronald Reagan was the first one to give it a presidential pardon. So like he sort of made it a little bit more formal,
right?
I guess. Which was funny. Me and Zach saw something earlier. Was saying that there was going to be like a formal hearing, or that a court was intervening to
the Ninth Circuit Court.
Yeah, the Ninth Circuit Court was going to intervene and not let Trump pardon this turkey. And that sort of states where we're at.
No, this is not necessarily like within direct relation of it, but I always wondered if like the pardoning had to do with the fact that at the beginning of the state's founding,
yes,
before we settled on the bald eagle as the national bird, there was debate over it being the turkey, which was presented by Benjamin Franklin. Franklin actually wanted the national bird to be a turkey. He thought that the eagle was sort of like standard, and he thought that the turkey was more representative for some reason of the United States. You can probably do more research on that. But originally, the turkey was put on the table as the national bird.
Wow. That is interesting. There's another theory that the origins of pardoning the turkey is from the Harry Truman administration. Because or I don't know why that's the case, but some people even say it could be further back in time with Abraham Lincoln, because he pardoned his son's Christmas turkey. Now that may lead into the what you.
I don't know if there's like still like a sort of ongoing respect for the bird because of the way it was presented as supposedly the national bird, but like I do know that the turkey was originally put forth by Benjamin Franklin as to be the national bird. I guess that got overruled for the bald eagle, which is a more traditional kind of bird. And I think the eagle's been around. I mean, the Germans have the eagle, the Romans had the eagle. You know what I mean? Like the eagle's been around for a long time.
It makes
That's probably
sense.
why like Franklin as an iconoclast wanted to go against that, but at the same time, it's probably why it got risen to the ranks anyway to be the national bird.
I mean, could you see like those patriotic commercials of like American flag flying and then like a turkey phasing in from behind it, and like you hear like the national anthem behind that with the turkey? Like, I mean,
well, in a way, I mean, like you would have like it would be sort of a weird sense of pride. Turkeys are such a I think they're a relatively intelligent bird too.
Yeah.
Because I know people who turkey hunt say that they're really clever and they're difficult to hunt. They actually have the turkeys do have like very strange brooding patterns, all kinds of weird stuff like that, where they actually have like scouts, like other turkeys will scout kind of.
Really?
Yeah, like wow. I think that's the way it works. I think they kind of like they sort of roam in packs, and then like they're like a scouting bird that goes ahead, so that the other birds know that there's like predatory element. It's very peculiar. They're a very strange bird. Like, on anything I say on this podcast. Sometimes I'm not always like the most well researched. Some of the stuff is just like fading memories from years past. So I definitely would backtrack everything I say. Correct me on Instagram, correct me on any channel you want. I'm totally fine with that. I don't mind. I like to be right. So when I'm told I'm wrong, I'll just figure out why. I'll just adjust. So it's not a problem. But
same with me.
So both, but I'm just talking off the cuff. So try not to hold me to some sort of empirical evidence kind of situation. This is not a science. But yeah.
Well, yeah. So that hopefully will be a nice little thing to tie everyone over till next month. When we get together for Christmas 2019 podcast.
And we will be talking about the traditions of Christmas, both historical. There's going to be a lot of interesting things going on. Yeah. Like I said, I am reading a book as of right now. I read it almost every year, but I'll be taking some notes and bringing them to the table. There's some very fascinating things about the origins of Christmas and the traditions that we hold dear, and maybe some things that can be more enlightening, hopefully, the way this Thanksgiving is. You didn't guys know, you didn't know that you were going to hear about cannibalism. Sure enough, that's how it rolls. So I'm at the bottom of my bowl. What about you?
Yeah, I'm down. So again, till next month, happy smoking.
Man, happy Thanksgiving.
When you smoke with us, you smoke with the best. Pace is lightning, expectations high. It's gonna come at you fast, come at you hot, gonna come at you wet.